Chapter 946. The Great Light Temple might have clashed with the Chunyang Dao sect before, but it was just a conflict between the two parties. It was not an intense battle, so no one was killed. However, this time, Yi Shao killed someone. Moreover, he killed a disciple that the Great Light Temple valued so much. How could the Great Light Temple not be angry? Once the news spread, even Su Yan could not suppress his anger. He brought 2 old monks of the Jing generation and a group of Great Light Temple disciples to cause trouble for the Chunyang Dao sect. In the Chunyang Dao sect, Shi Yunzi and Mako Mori held their heads in pain. Shi Yunzi stared at Yi Shao with an unfriendly gaze. Why did you kill someone from the Great Light Temple? Compared to Mako Mori, Shi Yunzi was actually more sensitive. Previously, he thought that Yi Shao was a chivalrous person, but now, it seemed that he was extraordinarily ruthless when he attacked. Was there such a chivalrous person? Yi Zhao's heart skipped a beat. He also knew that he had acted too hastily this time. Actually, his original plan was not like this. Chu Xiu only asked him to stir up the enmity between the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect. He did not give Yi Shao a time limit. Therefore, Yi Zhao's original plan was to intensify the conflict between the other party bit by bit. He killed Yan Guang previously because the other party was protected too clearly, so it was a little conspicuous. However, who would have thought that the Great Light Temple would value that guy so much? Killing him caused the Great Light Temple to go crazy. Therefore, if he did not explain well this time, it would be a little dangerous. Although he was anxious, on the surface, Yi Shao put on a righteous look and said, "Killing the enemy means killing. Previously, you taught me that since I have joined a sect, I should put the interests of the sect first. Since we are enemies with the Great Light Temple, why can't I kill them? I don't understand the twists and turns between the big sects, but now, it seems that I have killed someone, so there seems to be trouble. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. If those monks come looking for trouble, I'll fight it out with them." Mako Mori sighed, then he waved his hand and said to Shi Yunzi, "Don't blame him. He is a rogue cultivator, so he really doesn't know much about the relationships between the big sections. Don't forget the scene when we first met him. It's also our fault that we didn't give him a proper reminder. That's why he's like this today." After hearing Mako Mori's words, Shi Yunzi recalled that when they first met Yi Shao, he had single-handedly challenged the entire Jiao Dragon village and killed Chen Wujiao in front of everyone. Moreover, when they tried to recruit him into the Chunyang Dao sect, he was still holding Chen Wujiao's head. One could imagine that even though he hated evil, he had climbed his way up from the bottom of the martial arts world. His hands were stained with countless lives and blood. Indeed, people like him did not understand the checks and balances between the big sects, as well as the various schemes. To them, an enemy was an enemy, so they could just kill him and be done with it. Why bother with so many complicated things? Shi Yunzi sighed, then waved his hand and said, "Forget it, it's none of your business. You're now a disciple of the Chunyang Dao sect. The Chunyang Dao sect will never throw a disciple out to be the scapegoat no matter what. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. At most, we'll just fight with those monks. You can leave now." After letting Yi Shao leave, Shi Yunzi said to Mako Mori, "Uncle Master, do you think those monks will really do it?" Mako Mori shook his head and said, "Who knows? If the Great Light Temple had sent another martial institution, perhaps there would have been room for discussion. However, the Great Light Temple just had to send the Vajra school this time, so it's a little tricky. Those fellows from the Vajra school are very hot-tempered. Now that someone has died, even if they say they don't want to do anything, I'm afraid they won't be able to stop their subordinates." Shi Yunzi scratched his head and said, "I'm not afraid of them doing anything, but I'm afraid that those fellows from the Great Light Temple will do it for real and let Chu Xiu watch the show." Mako Mori also sighed and said, "After all, it was us who killed someone. This matter will depend on the Great Light Temple's attitude." At the moment, in the Great Light Temple, Mako Mori had a deep understanding of the Great Light Temple. Shi Yunzi could maintain his rationality, but it did not mean that others could. The Chunyang Dao sect was the first to kill their disciple. If there was no explanation for this, no one would be able to tolerate it. Therefore, even if Shi Yunzi wanted to investigate the matter thoroughly before taking action, he had no choice but to be dragged into trouble with the Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi called back all the people who were searching for the disciple outside. The Vajra school gathered together and went to the Chunyang Dao sect's northern Yen branch to cause trouble for them. As the Chunyang Dao sect was personally called over by Xiang Long, the northern Yen branch was also prepared by Xiang Long. It was at the east side of the city, and everything around it had been emptied and given to the Chunyang Dao sect. At the moment, the group of Great Light Temple's disciples had already surrounded the Chunyang Dao sect's branch. Shi Yunzi walked out with a smile and said, "I say, everyone, who are you trying to scare by making such a big fuss? Can't you just talk things out nicely?" Shi Yunzi said expressionlessly, "Of course we can talk things out nicely. Chu Xiu is right about one thing. A life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. Hand over the person who killed the Great Light Temple's disciple, and we'll settle this." Shi Yunzi raised his brows slightly. They would not even hand over an ordinary Chunyang Dao sect disciple, let alone a disciple like Yi Shao, whom they valued greatly. If they were to hand over the person, it would disappoint the disciples. For a large sect like the Chunyang Dao sect, it was fine for them to be stubborn, but it was impossible for them to admit defeat. Shi Yunzi shook his head and sighed. "Master Shi Yunzi, this is where you're wrong. You must know that monks are compassionate. Don't you Buddhist sects emphasize on repenting and becoming a Buddha? Now that this disciple of our Chunyang Dao sect has decided to repent, can't we just let this matter go?" Shi Yunzi remained expressionless as he said, "Repenting? Fine, send him to the Great Light Temple. We'll help him transcend his murderous intent and help him become a Buddha." Shi Yunzi frowned and said, "Is there really no way to discuss this?" Shi Yunzi said coldly, "Do it." As soon as he said that, the group of Great Light Temple's disciples charged toward the Chunyang Dao sect. This time, the Chunyang Dao sect had really infuriated them. After all, although Chu Xiu had also killed someone previously, the person he killed was not an official disciple of the Great Light Temple. Although Buddha said that all living beings were equal, it was clear that regardless of whether it was Shi Yunzi or the other people from the Great Light Temple, their cultivation had not reached the level where all living beings were equal. Therefore, it was a completely different concept for outsiders to be killed and their own people to be killed. Shi Yunzi was helpless and could only let the people from the Chunyang Dao sect take action and resist together. In terms of numbers, the Chunyang Dao sect's side was at a disadvantage. Fortunately, the people that the Chunyang Dao sect had brought were not weak either. Mako Mori single-handedly held off the two Jing cohort monks from the Great Light Temple. Meanwhile, Shi Yunzi relied on the pure Yang divine weapon in his hands to fight against Shi Yunzi. He did not have to worry about being defeated for the time being. However, the other warriors from the Chunyang Dao sect were not so optimistic. They had fewer people to begin with, and their abilities did not exceed the warriors from the Great Light Temple by too much. Therefore, they were suppressed right away. At that moment, Yi Shao was in the branch, and some of the other newly accepted disciples from the Chunyang Dao sect were also there. With their abilities, they would be sending themselves to their deaths if they went out. At that moment, Yi Zhao's eyes narrowed, and he was about to go out with his sword. Daoist Xian Yi, who was in charge of protecting them, quickly said, "Ancestor, what are you going to do now?" Previously, when Yi Shao killed someone, because he was the one leading the team, he was considered to have not been able to supervise him. However, he was scolded by Shi Yunzi, and after that, he was scolded by Mako Mori. He was very depressed. Yi Shao pointed outside and said, "The other brothers are still fighting hard outside, and you want me to drag out an ignoble existence here?" Daoist Xian Yi said helplessly, "But with your current abilities, it's useless even if you go out." Yi Shao shook his head and said, "They're useless, but I'm useful. Senior, since I've joined the Chunyang Dao sect, that means I'm a member of the Chunyang Dao sect. Looking at the others fighting with their lives on the outside, but I turn a blind eye here. I'm sorry, I can't do that." "Can you do that, Senior?" Daoist Xian Yi gritted his teeth and said, "Of course, I can't do that either." Yi Shao waved his hand. "If that's the case, then let's fight our way out together." The other juniors can't help, so let them stay here. After saying that, Yi Xiao walked out directly. When Daoist Xianxia saw this, he could only grit his teeth and follow him. The outside was already in a mess, but Yi Xiao looked around subconsciously. After the incident, he passed the news to Chu Xiu through the Jianghu spies in Yanjing City. Chu Xiu only replied with one sentence, which was to find a chance to escape, and that Chu Xiu was secretly helping him. But where was Chu Xiu now? Everyone was fighting fiercely. How could Chu Xiu take him away in public? Or should he find a chance to escape himself? However, at this moment, Yi Xiao was targeted by someone. It was a young monk with a bare upper body. His whole body was muscular, and his chest, back, and arms were engraved with Buddha's prints that were emitting a dazzling brilliance. After seeing Yi Xiao, the monk immediately recognized that Yi Xiao was the person who killed Yan Guang. Without saying a word, he directly punched Yi Xiao. Yi Xiao and Daoist Xianxia noticed this fluctuation at the same time. Both of them blocked with their swords almost at the same time, but they were blown away by the other party's punch. Daoist Xianxia exclaimed, "Oh no! It's Prince Xiaoming, Yan Shi." The other party was another young martial artist from the Great Light Temple who entered the Longhu list after Prince Xiaoming, Zhongxian, stepped into the real pellet state. Because the other party's martial arts were extremely similar to Zhongxian's, they both walked the path of extreme physical strength, and even their style of doing things was somewhat similar. Therefore, he was also called Prince Xiaoming by the people of the martial arts world. This person had already reached the unity of heaven and man realm. Yi Xiao and Daoist Xianxia couldn't stop him at all. However, at this moment, a subtle voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xiao's ear. "Lead him to the edge of the battlefield." Chapter 947. On a tall building a few miles away from the battlefield between Chunyang Dao sect and Great Guangming Temple, Chu Xiu, Mei Qinglian, Mu Zi, Peng Hu and several other high-level members of Jianghu Hall were there. At this distance, they could clearly see everything that happened on the battlefield with their eyesight. The voice transmission in Yi Xiao's ear just now was said by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu and the others were going overboard at this time. They even ordered some fruits and snacks as if they were watching a show, watching the fight between Taoism and Buddhism. While Tangya and Pang who were drinking, they were still commenting on whose move was good, whose move was terrible, etc. Mei Qinglian said at the side, "I didn't expect that kid to be able to provoke Taoism and Buddhism so quickly. He's a genius." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Luck plays a big role. The person he killed happened to be a disciple that Great Guangming Temple valued very much. So, he only killed one person and it completely angered Great Guangming Temple. However, most things in this world only look at the result, not the process. Luck itself is a part of one's strength." Mei Qinglian raised her eyebrows slightly and said, "You mean Lu Fengxian?" Chu Xiu's expression was a little strange. He said, "Brother Lu is not just lucky. It's simply a blessing. However, Yi Zhao's luck is also good." Lu Fengxian was also in northern Yan at this time, but he did not stay in Jianghu Hall. Instead, he chose to bring Shui Wuxiang and the others to the far north wilderness to cultivate. The majority of people, including Chu Xiu and the others, believed that Lv Fengxian's luck was very good. In fact, it was so good that it was as if the heavens were looking after her. Tangya was even betting with others that Lv Fengxian would certainly be able to find some ancient remains or treasures in the northern wilderness. However, if Lu Fengxian really relied on luck, he would not have been able to cultivate to his current level, and he would not have the combat power he had now. In fact, when it came to cultivation, Lu Fengxian was no worse than anyone else. Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "If you say that Lv Fengxian's luck is good, I can believe it, but I don't see how Yi Zhao's luck is good. If his luck was good, why would he be sent by you to carry out such a dangerous mission?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Meeting me back then was the greatest fortune in his life." Mei Qinglian was speechless as she watched Chu Xiu acting cool. But thinking about it carefully, what Chu Xiu said seemed to be right. If Yi Xiao had not met Chu Xiu, he would have been bullied and humiliated in the Yi family. It was because he accidentally obtained the blood soul pearl that Chu Xiu's remnant soul was placed in, that he was able to turn things around. Although Chu Xiu was not very reliable, at the very least, he had turned Yi Zhao's life upside down. Hey, that kid seems to be in danger. Mei Qinglian suddenly pointed in the direction of the battlefield. Yi Zhao was indeed unable to hold on any longer. In Chu Xiu's view, the strength of that Prince Xiaoming, Yan Shi was far inferior to Zhong Xian. When Chu Xiu was at the unity of heaven and man realm, he had fought with Zhong Xian more than once or twice. In Chu Xiu's view, this Yan Shi's strength was at most only 30% of Zhong Xian's when they were at the same level, and this was an overestimation. In Chu Xiu's generation, there were many evildoers on the Longhu list. When it came to the next generation, they seemed to be much more mediocre. But in fact, it was not the next generation that was mediocre. People like Yan Shi were at the normal level of strength on the Longhu list. It could only be said that in Chu Xiu's generation, they were all evildoers. After all, Yi Zhao was a level lower than Yan Shi. Even if there was Daoist Xian Yi, their strength was still too far apart. After a dozen moves, he was already in danger. Chu Xiu suddenly said to Mei Qinglian, "Can your beauty technique forcibly reverse a person's memory? It only needs 3 breaths of time." Mei Qinglian nodded and said, "You want me to attack that Yan Shi?" With his strength, even if he practiced Buddhist martial arts, it would be easy. But the problem is, as long as I get close, I will definitely be noticed by that old Taoist Mako Mori and the old monk of the great Guangming temple. At that time, once they know Yi Zhao's identity, they will immediately understand everything. Then, they will directly turn their spears and join forces to deal with you. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "There's no need to get close. Just make your move here." Mei Qinglian widened her eyes and said, "Who do you think I am? I'm not a god. This is a distance of several miles. You want me to use the beauty technique to influence a person from several miles away? I can't even extend my spiritual power that far, let alone the great chick technique." Chu Xiu pointed to himself and said, "What if you include me? Don't forget, I have also practiced the secret spiritual technique." Mei Qinglian hesitated and said, "Then try it." "I can't be too sure. Give me your hand and only transfer the purest spiritual energy to me. Don't add any auxiliary power. You are stronger than me. The impact of spiritual energy is not a good feeling. If you hurt me, I will not let you off." Chu Xiu reached out and held Mei Qinglian's white and tender hand. This scene made Mu Zi very unhappy. She secretly stared at Mei Qinglian. How infuriating. But at this time, she was also helpless. She had not practiced the primordial spirit's secret technique, so she could not help young Master Chu. An extremely pure spiritual force was transmitted into Mei Qinglian's body. Even if it was a martial skill or aura qi, its power would be greatly reduced at this distance. Not to mention the extremely powerful spiritual force, but at the same time, it was also a very fragile existence. But fortunately, Chu Xiu's spiritual energy was really strong enough to allow Mei Qinglian's spiritual energy to extend to the edge of the battlefield. At this time, Yi Zhao could not hold on any longer. Even the long sword in his hand was shattered by Yan Shi's punch. At this time, Mei Qinglian's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Zhao's ear. "Run. Start running now. You only have 3 types of time. Within 3 breaths, you have to disappear from the sight of these 2 people." Yi Zhao was stunned. But at the next moment, Yan Shi and Daoist Xian Yi were stunned. A trace of light flashed in their eyes. Yi Zhao could tell that this was Mei Qinglian's voice. At this time, he could not care about anything else. He directly ignited the blood in his body and burst forth with his strongest speed. In 2 breaths, he had already flashed hundreds of feet and disappeared into the corner of the street. But at this time, in the minds of Yan Shi and Daoist Xian Yi, another scene appeared. Yan Shi's hand formed the Bright King seal. The power of the Bright King seal actually had some of the charm of the Uncle Master Zhong Xian that he worshipped. When the seal landed, it actually blasted Yi Zhao into a cloud of blood mist. Daoist Xianxi's mouth was wide open. His face was filled with disbelief. When the 3 breaths time was up, Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian could not hold on any longer. They immediately retracted their spiritual power. Both of their faces were pale and they panted at the same time. These 3 breaths worth of illusions did not allow Yan Shi and Daoist Xianxi to notice anything wrong. Yan Shi only looked at his own hands in surprise. When did his bright king seal improve so much? While Yan Shi was stunned, Daoist Xianxi took the opportunity to run. He ran to the center of the battlefield and shouted, "Uncle Master! Yi Xiao has been killed by Yan Shi from the Temple of Great Light." Shi Yunzi and Mako Mori were stunned. Mako Mori trembled and said, "Isn't Yi Xiao staying in the branch? How did he die at Yan Shi's hands?" Daoist Xianxi shrunk his neck and said, "It was junior brother Yi Xiao who insisted on coming out to fight to the death. He said that his senior and junior brothers were all fighting to the death outside, and he could not live in peace inside. In the end, the moment we came out, we were targeted by Yan Shi from the Temple of Great Light. At this time, Yan Shi also returned to where Su Yan and the others were. He said in a low voice, 'I've already killed the murderer who killed junior brother Yan Guang.' With Yan Shi's confirmation, this matter was already settled. This time, the ones who were seething with anger were the people from the Chunyang Dao sect. Their Chunyang Dao sect was already short of manpower. Their desire for the next generation of disciples was much stronger than that of the Temple of Great Light. The Temple of Great Light had lost Yan Guang, and there was still Prince Xiaoming Yan Shi. However, it was not easy for them to find Yi Xiao. In the end, not even a few days had passed, and he was killed. How could they continue? Just now, it was the Temple of Great Light who wanted to find trouble with the Chunyang Dao sect. However, this time, it was the Chunyang Dao sect who charged at the Temple of Great Light relentlessly. That crazy drive did not have the slightest bit of the elegance and naturalness of the Daoists. When Chu Xiu, who was watching the battle from a distant building, saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head and said, TSK, this bunch of Daoists are quite agitated when they go crazy. They are even more brutal than when they attacked me last time. Luckily, I was far away this time, or else I would have been covered in blood." Chu Xiu was still making sarcastic remarks here. At this time, Yi Xiao had already walked up the stairs with a pale face. He bowed to Chu Xiu and said, "Master, I'm lucky that I didn't disappoint you." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "This time, you completed your task well. It should be said that you are quite surprised. You even completed it better than I imagined. The 3 positions that I promised you before, now you can choose at will." Yi Xiao did not even think about it and said directly, "I am willing to stay in the Jianghu Hall." In fact, Yi Xiao had already thought about these 3 positions very clearly before. The Guanzhong torture room was a place of defense. As long as there was no war between the 3 countries, the Guanzhong torture room would always be very peaceful. It was a place for retirement. Even if Chu Xiu gave him the position of the head of the 4 torturers, it would be meaningless. He was still young and had the opportunity to climb further. One of the dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society was tempting enough, but Yi Xiao also remembered what Chu Xiu said. Killing was just a means, not an end. He had enough training in the Blue Dragon Society. After learning how to kill, he did not want to continue to stay in the Blue Dragon Society. Therefore, the most attractive position for him was the Jianghu Hall. The Jianghu Hall could be said to be a force that Chu Xiu had truly created. Similarly, Chu Xiu also had many strong people under him. There was Mei Qinglian from the Yin Demon faction, Tang Ye and Yan Bugue from the Blue Dragon Society, and Pang Hu, who used to be one of the 36 Northern Bandits. Staying in the Jianghu Hall, the competition would definitely be amazing, but there were also more possibilities in the future. Chapter 948. Yi Zhao's choice was within Chu Xiu's expectations. Although the competition in the Jianghu Hall was high, there were also the most opportunities. However, Yi Xiao still needed to temporarily hide his appearance and identity, at least for the time being. Otherwise, if the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Light Temple knew that they had been fooled, they would definitely go crazy. Of course, the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Light Temple were still going crazy, and they were fighting fiercely. Mako Mori was still strong despite his old age. He managed to severely injure the two Jing generation monks of the Great Light Temple by himself. However, Shi Yunzi was at a disadvantage. With the pure Yang divine weapon, Shi Yunzi's strength was enough to fight against ordinary martial artists in the true fire spiritual refinement realm. However, the problem was that Su Yan was not normal. He was the first seed of the Great Light Temple's martial arts academy. Even though he had only just entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm, his abilities were not something an ordinary martial artist could compare to. Therefore, Shi Yunzi had suffered quite a bit of damage. In general, the Chunyang Dao sect was at a disadvantage in this battle. After all, they had fewer people. After this battle, both sides were in a situation where both sides were heavily injured. Basically, no one could cause trouble for Chu Xiu anymore, unless the Temple of Great Light or the Pure Yang Taoist sect sent another group of people to northern Yen. However, such a situation was not very possible. A branch was ultimately a branch. The two lineages of Taoism and Buddhism did not come to northern Yen to fight to the death with Chu Xiu, nor did they come to fight to the death with Chu Xiu. For the sake of a branch, they had to bet the might of the entire sect and go all out. The leaders of Taoism and Buddhism would not be so impulsive. The Taoist and Buddhist sects finally calmed down, and Chu Xiu finally heaved a sigh of relief. The Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect were just small troubles caused by Xianglong. The real trouble was still the ownership of the throne after Xianglong's death. With Xiangchang's character, if he were to ascend to the throne, Chu Xiu would inevitably fall out with him. Although he might not lose, if he were to fight against the northern Yen court, the foundation of Chu Xiu's Jianghu Hall would be completely destroyed. In the northern Yen imperial palace, Xianglong was at the end of his rope. Previously, Xianglong could still stand with the help of others, but in the past month, it was difficult for him to even stand up. Xiangchong stood by Xianglong's bed with a complicated expression on his face. It was true that he deeply hated Xianglong, but Xianglong was still his elder brother. Xiangchong's heart ached when he saw Xianglong looking as if he was going to die at any moment. Xianglong lay on the bed and asked weakly, "What's the situation outside now?" His eyes stared straight at the ceiling. In fact, Xianglong's eyes could no longer see anything. Xiangchong said, "The Jianghu Hall and the Taoist and Buddhist lineages have been in constant conflict with each other. The Taoist and Buddhist lineages had just had a big battle. It was a relatively fierce conflict, and both sides suffered losses." "What about the Jianghu Hall?" Xiangchong said, "The Taoist and Buddhist lineages had a fierce battle because of their disciples. The Jianghu Hall did not participate in it." "What a pity." Xianglong sighed. If the Jianghu Hall could also participate in it, it would be perfect if all three sides suffered losses in the end. By the way, how is Xiangchong now? Although Xianglong said to the outside world that he had no selfish motives in making Xiangchong the crown prince, he loved Xiangchong the most among all the princes. If it were not for Xiangchong's age, he would have become the crown prince long ago. Therefore, even if Xianglong could not hold on any longer, he still wanted to protect his chosen successor one last time. Xiangchong hesitated for a moment and said, "He's fine. The power under his command has now far surpassed Xiangli. It's just that his desire for power is too strong, and he likes to use Jianghu people." Xiangchong had already beautified Xiangchong's actions countless times before saying this. Looking at Xianglong's state, it was obvious that he would not live for long. Asking Xianglong to replace the crown prince at this time was not a good thing for the northern Yen. It could easily cause unrest in the northern Yen court. Moreover, looking at Xianglong's state, Xiangchong could not bear to say too many bad things about Xiangchong. Therefore, when Xianglong heard this, he only smiled weakly and said, "Desire for power? A person without a strong desire for power cannot become an emperor. As for using Jianghu people, this is not a bad thing. Didn't I also use Jianghu people? The Jianghu and the court are not clear. Instead of rejecting and suppressing them, it is better to make use of them. Chong is still too young and may not be able to do well in some areas. Therefore, he still needs the elders of the Northern Yan royal family to help him. Xiang Chong nodded with a slightly dark expression. He was too embarrassed to tell Xiang Chong that he could not control his son. Last time, he had gone to teach him a lesson, but Xiang Chong had turned a deaf ear to it, clearly not taking it to heart. At this time, Xiang Chong was indeed a little too full of himself. With so many experts under his command, he did not think that he needed the help of these so-called elders like Xiang Chong. Why did they not come to help him when he was not the crown prince? In contrast to Xiang Chong's arrogance, his subordinate Lin Fengyu was very anxious. The stronger Xiang Chong's subordinates were, the more anxious he became. This was because Daoist Wuyang had brought these powers to Xiang Chong, and he was being valued less and less. Previously, Lin Fengyu and Daoist Wuyang had been regarded as the crown prince's right-hand man. But now, the gap between the two was becoming more and more obvious. Even outsiders could see this. After all, Daoist Wuyang was the one who had brought so many experts to Xiang Chong's side. He had also helped Xiang Chong solve quite a few troublesome problems. As for Lin Fengyu, besides a woman who lived off women, what else did he have? He was simply a good-for-nothing. This situation made Lin Fengyu, who had always been motivated to follow Xiang Chong to achieve great things and become a minister, very anxious. Seeing Lin Fengyu's appearance, Li Jiaodi could not help but say in a gentle voice, "Yulang, don't worry about these things. You're just a dog of the imperial court. Don't be one. Follow me back to the Hidden Devil clan. At worst, I'll personally beg Wuxia Xianxia, and the others to let you establish a sect in the Hidden Devil clan. When the time comes, wouldn't it be great to be the sect master yourself?" If other members of the Hidden Devil clan saw Li Jiaodi's appearance, their eyeballs would definitely pop out of their sockets. Among the Hidden Devil clan, Li Jiaodi was definitely the most dislikable one. For example, Yuan Tianfang, who had been killed by Chu Xiu, was also extreme and dislikable. But at least in a situation where there was no conflict of interest, Yuan Tianfang would not provoke others. But Li Jiaodi was famous for her sharp and unkind words. Even if it was a normal conversation, she could cause a bellyful of anger. But everyone knew her character. It was not worth it to be serious with her. But if you endured it, you would still be angry in your heart. So in this way, not many people were willing to deal with her. No one had seen such a gentle way of speaking from Li Jiaodi. It was enough to show how great the power of love was. Lin Fengyu said somewhat impatiently, "What do you know? Those who are below one and above tens of thousands are not the dogs of the imperial court, but the nobles. If I go to the Hidden Devil clan as a local rat, I might be targeted and annihilated by those righteous sections. I won't go." After saying that, Lin Fengyu also felt that his words were a bit harsh. He quickly changed his tone and said, "I didn't mean that. It's just that I've been with His Highness for so many years. In the end, when His Highness is about to ascend the throne, I'm going to be kicked out. I'm unwilling." At this point, Lin Fengyu suddenly raised his head and said, "Say, if I help His Highness seize a part of the power of the Jianghu Hall, will His Highness be happy? I've heard His Highness scolding Chu Xiu for not knowing how to appreciate favors." Lin Fengyu did not do this on a whim. He relied on his own scheming to deduce this. The existence of the Jianghu Hall was first feared by Xiang Long. Then, Chu Xiu rejected Xiang Chong's recruitment. This Chu Xiu had clearly parted ways with the Xiang royal family. Of course, he did not have the ability to destroy the Jianghu Hall, nor did he dare to think about it. But it was still possible to take advantage of the battle between the Taoist, Buddhist, and demon branches to take advantage of the Jianghu Hall. The main thing was to gain Xiang Chong's favor. Li Jiaodi's expression changed slightly. She said in a slightly serious tone, "Yulang, if you go and provoke others, I can help you block them. But don't provoke Chu Xiu." Li Jiaodi had been in Jianghu for a long time. Most of the time, she was a big shot in the Yinma branch. She was treated respectfully by many of the younger disciples of the Yinma branch. Therefore, Li Jiaodi was very arrogant and fearless. In the Yinma branch, Li Jiaodi had never been afraid of Wei Shixia, who was extremely senior, or Ren Qianxiu, who held the phaseless demon sect, a first-rate demon path power. But the last time in the ancestral land of the Black Sky demon sect, Li Jiaodi was really afraid. She was not afraid of being beaten by Chu Xiu. She was afraid of Chu Xiu's attitude. That kind of attitude where he had no scruples and really dared to kill her. Previously, Li Jiaodi had offended many people because of her foul mouth. But no matter who it was, no one had any killing intent towards her. But the last time in the Black Sky demon sect, she was sure that Chu Xiu really dared to kill her and was really prepared to kill her. If Li Jiaodi did not have the secret technique of the Red Lotus Demon Lord, Red Lotus Escape, she might have already died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Therefore, in Li Jiaodi's view, Chu Xiu was an out-and-out madman. He did not care what status you had or what scruples you had. He would directly kill you first. Facing such a person, you either had to kill him or not provoke him. It could be said that if it was not because of Lin Fengyu, the power of love was too great. Li Jiaodi did not want to appear in front of Chu Xiu again in this life. Hearing Li Jiaodi's words, a strange look flashed in Lin Fengyu's eyes. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, I know the severity of the matter. I will not easily provoke that guy Chu Xiu." Li Jiaodi nodded with a peace of mind. Unfortunately, she did not know that a man's promise was often the most unreliable. She had suffered losses when she was young, but now, she still did not learn from it. Chapter 949. As a devil in the eyes of most people in Jianghu, in their eyes, Chu Xiu must have raped, looted, killed, and enjoyed bloodthirsty killing. In fact, with Chu Xiu's current status, even if he really wanted to rape and loot, he had a large group of people to do it for him. He had no time to do such low-level things. During this time, Chu Xiu was very busy. He was so busy that he did not even have time to practice. Both Taoism and Buddhism had been solved. Chu Xiu was also seizing the time to make arrangements. The strength of all parties must be adjusted to perfection without any flaws. There was only one chance. If Xiangli was not promoted to the throne, all his arrangements and forces in the northern Yan land would be abandoned. Therefore, during this period of time, not only was Chu Xiu setting up these things, but he was also deducing the various situations and accidents that would occur when Xiang Chong ascended the throne. Then, he would think about how to resolve these accidents and strive to not leave any loopholes. However, man proposes, God disposes. It should be said that Chu Xiu did not expect that someone would come to trouble him at this time. A disciple of Jianghu Hall rushed in and shouted, "Bad news! Lord Fire Slave is besieged and is in danger." Everyone in Jianghu Hall was there. When they heard the news, everyone was stunned. Recently, Jianghu Hall had been withdrawing their forces from the northern Yan Jianghu back to Yanjing City. At this time, who else would come? It should be said, who dared to come to trouble them? Chu Xiu walked out with a gloomy face and said coldly, "Don't panic. What the hell is going on? Who besieged the Fire Slave? Where is he now?" "It's Lin Fengyu, the Crown Prince's subordinate. He is at the west side of the city." Previously, several gangs in the west city respected our Jianghu Hall, but I don't know what's wrong with Lin Fengyu. He wanted to confiscate the offerings of those gangs. Those gangs were usually respectful to our Jianghu Hall. When something happened, they informed Lord Fire Slave in time. As a result, Lord Fire Slave fought with the other side after a few words. But the other party has the advantage in numbers. When I came to report, Lord Fire Slave was already in danger. Hearing this, Mei Qinglian and the others had a strange look on their faces. Did Xiang Chang's brain get squeezed by a door? Why did he come to provoke the Jianghu Hall at this time? The Jianghu Hall governed the northern Yan Jianghu. Some small gangs in Yanjing City were naturally under the jurisdiction of the Jianghu Hall. However, these gangs were generally very weak. After all, they were at the foot of the world. They could only do some despicable things. Even the suppression hall did not put them in their eyes. If Xiangchang's subordinates really provoked the Jianghu Hall for a little bit of tribute, then their brains would be squeezed by the door. However, if Xiangcheng wanted to target the Jianghu Hall, he would not be unable to wait for such a short time since he was about to ascend the throne, right? Moreover, Daoist Wuyang was by Xiangcheng's side at the moment. If Xiangcheng wanted to attack the subduing martial hall, why didn't he send any news? Could it be that Daoist Wuyang had betrayed him? No one could have guessed that Lin Fengyu had done this boldly behind Xiangcheng's back. Not to mention Daoist Wuyang, even Li Jiaodi did not know. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said coldly, "Who cares what the reason is? Does he really think that he can touch the people of the Jianghu Hall whenever he wants?" If Xiangcheng did not provoke him, he would naturally not provoke Xiangcheng either. Anyway, it was not long before he ascended the throne. The day when the real intention was revealed was coming. But now, Xiangcheng dared to openly provoke the Jianghu Hall. In such a situation, Chu Xiu could not tolerate it, and he had no way to tolerate it. At this time, on the long street in the west of the city, the fire slave was fighting 1 against 5. He was covered in blood and looked extremely miserable. Although Lin Fengyu's position in Xiangcheng's heart had declined greatly, he still had Li Jiaodi behind him. He was also Xiangcheng's confidant. Therefore, in the Crown Prince's palace, he had a lot of confidants. These 5 people were all martial artists of the Unity of Nature realm that he recruited from the underworld, but he did not expect that an unknown guy from the Jianghu Hall would be so difficult to deal with. Facing the siege of the 5 people, Fire Slave clenched his teeth and dodged with his strange martial skills with a strong Western region style. When he couldn't dodge, he had to fight with his opponents. Of course, he couldn't defeat them in the end. Things had reached such a dangerous level, but the Fire Slave still did not think about escaping. If he escaped, he would not only lose his face, but also the face of the Jianghu Hall. This place was Yanjing City, and so many people were watching. He couldn't afford to lose his face. If he lost his face, he might lose his life and future. In fact, the Fire Slave was a very contented person. He was a slave in the western regions, and his life was extremely rough. For him, he was already very satisfied as long as he could live and eat and drink. So even if Yan Bugui and Tangya, who were his colleagues in the past, had stepped into the real pellet state, and they had become the confidants of official Chu, he had nothing to be jealous of. But no matter how contented he was reluctant to give up everything he had now. Some things were fine if he couldn't get them, but once he got them, he didn't want to lose them again. Official Chu didn't want useless subordinates. Although the Fire Slave was not as good as Tangya or Yan Bugui, he was not useless. The qi and blood around the Fire Slave was constantly burning. The martial artists who fought with him were all stunned. Isn't it just a normal conflict? Why is this guy risking his life? The Fire Slave wanted to fight desperately, but they didn't, so they were forced back by the Fire Slave for a while. But burning blood essence couldn't last long, and the Fire Slave himself was getting weaker and weaker. Feeling the power in his body getting weaker and weaker, the Fire Slave smiled helplessly. Talent was the most helpless thing. If it were Tangya and Yan Bugui in this situation, they would have killed them all long ago, and he could only struggle to hold on. He was actually a person who was very afraid of death. If one were to say that he was loyal to Chu Xiu, he would not be loyal to the extent that he would be willing to die for him. But today, he did not know why, but he was determined to fight to the death here. However, he had already fought to the death, and there was no chance for regret. Just as the Fire Slave was about to fight to the death, a breeze suddenly flashed. The 5 people in front of the Fire Slave stood there at the same time. The next moment, a black dot appeared on the forehead of the 5 people. In an instant, the black dot spread, and the 5 people turned into a pile of flying ash in the breeze. This scene scared the people on Lin Fengyu's side. The Fire Slave suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on his mouth. Being alive was better than being dead. A strong force was sent into his body, and Chu Xiu's voice came from behind him. Your courage is commendable, but you are very stupid. Next time you encounter such a situation, come back to ask for help first, and then kill his family. The fire slave smiled bitterly and scratched his head. The owner of the tavern cheated me. I'm afraid he drank too much fake wine. Chu Xiu waved his hand and asked someone to take the fire slave away for Feng Buping to treat. The next moment, when he turned his head to Lin Fengyu suddenly had a feeling that he was looking at death. It was a kind of fear that was close to the bottom of his heart, and even his legs couldn't help but tremble. Lin Fengyu hadn't seen Chu Xiu before. It should be said that with his previous status, he wasn't even qualified to see Chu Xiu. The name Chu Xiu was just a legend to him. But today, when he saw Chu Xiu, he finally understood why Li Jiaodi told him not to provoke Chu Xiu. Even though Chu Xiu hadn't said a word, he was already feeling regretful. At this moment, Chu Xiu was also sizing up Lin Fengyu. Seeing him like this, Chu Xiu roughly understood that this idiot must have come looking for trouble on his own. He had wrongly accused Daoist Wu Wang, but Daoist Wu Wang probably didn't even know about this. Although Xiang Chong was a little arrogant, no matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't be so arrogant that he would come looking for trouble with Chu Xiu at this time. However, Chu Xiu was very puzzled. Why would Li Jiaodi take a fancy to this kind of trash? Could it be because of his face? The moment he saw Lin Fengyu, Chu Xiu no longer had the desire to investigate further. He didn't even have the mood to talk nonsense with this kind of trash. Just as Chu Xiu was about to kill Lin Fengyu, Li Jiaodi's figure had yet to appear, but her voice came from afar. Chu Xiu. Let Yulan go this time. Let him go this time, I'll agree to anything you want. Li Jiaodi's figure appeared at the corner of the street. At this moment, her face was full of anxiety and panic. Obviously, she was afraid that Chu Xiu would really kill Lin Fengyu. She didn't know that Lin Fengyu had acted on his own this time. If she had known, she would have stopped him with all her might. Chu Xiu even dared to kill her, a fellow Hidden Devil clan elder. To Chu Xiu, Xiang Chong, who was behind Lin Fengyu, wouldn't have the slightest scruple. Therefore, after hearing the news, she rushed over immediately. Fortunately, Chu Xiu hadn't made his move yet, so there was still a chance. For Lin Fengyu, Li Jiaodi was willing to give up many things. Even if she had a grudge against Chu Xiu, she, who had never begged anyone in her life, didn't hesitate to ask Chu Xiu for help. Even if Chu Xiu asked her to obey his orders from now on, Li Jiaodi would agree. At this moment, Chu Xiu's movements paused slightly, which made Li Jiaodi's eyes suddenly full of expectation. But then, Chu Xiu snapped his fingers, and the qi of heaven and earth trembled violently. The next moment, Lin Fengyu's chest exploded directly. He fell to the ground with a look of disbelief in his eyes. The fire slave was fighting for the reputation of Jianghu Hall. If he didn't kill Lin Fengyu, how would other people of Jianghu Hall look at him, Chu Xiu? Moreover, Chu Xiu wasn't interested in the conditions that Li Jiaodi had offered. To put it in a somewhat arrogant way, Chu Xiu didn't care about ordinary true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists. What he cared more about was ability and loyalty. Even if Li Jiaodi was willing to surrender to Chu Xiu at this time, Chu Xiu didn't want to use her. Chapter 950. Li Jiaodi had already descended into madness after witnessing the man she loved being killed right in front of her eyes. She had already realized that she was no match for Chu Xiu when she had fought with the Black Sky Demon cult previously. However, she was still charging towards Chu Xiu in a frenzy. A red lotus mark bloomed on her forehead, and her entire body was enveloped in a layer of dazzling fire-like stellar energy. It was extremely dazzling and resplendent, as if it could burn everything in the world. However, within it, there was a trace of vitality. It was a power that could purify everything, as if it could purify everything in the world into the purest form of vitality. Red Lotus Hellfire. It's the purest form of Red Lotus Hellfire. Lu Jianghu, who had not spoken for a long time, had a look of disbelief on his face. He sounded as if he had just swallowed a fly. This woman had actually used the Red Lotus Hellfire that only the Red Lotus Demon Lord had been able to control in the past. He could not accept this. Moreover, he did not understand. This woman had clearly used her own qi and blood to barely ignite the power of the hellfire to activate the Red Lotus hellfire. Now, it was just the death of a lover. How could she directly control the Red Lotus hellfire? Chu Xiu did not say anything. He took a step forward, and half of his body was enveloped in Buddhist light, while the other half was enveloped in the strange apocalyptic fire. The Red Lotus hellfire surprised Chu Xiu. The 4 great demon lords of the Kunlun demon sect were truly extraordinary. The power that this Red Lotus demon lord possessed was somewhat similar to the world annihilation flames of the Mahakala demon sect. It was a kind of power that existed between life and death. The Red Lotus hellfire could burn away all evil in the world, but in that barren land, there was still endless vitality blooming. It was destruction, but it was also rebirth. However, what surprised Chu Xiu was that this power did not belong to Li Jiaodi. Even though she had used the Red Lotus hellfire, she was not qualified to be looked at by Chu Xiu. Amidst the endless Buddhist light and black flames, a strange Dharma form appeared. On the left was a Buddha with a majestic Dharma form. The one on the right was a demon, its demonic flames overflowing the heavens. The Buddha on the left made a mudra with one hand and pressed Li Jiaodi to the ground. However, the Red Lotus hellfire continued to burn fiercely. Li Jiaodi was a cultivator at the true fire spiritual refinement realm, but her attacks were completely out of control. She only knew how to use all her strength to burn the Red Lotus hellfire, and one of the Buddha's hands began to melt. However, at this moment, the demon lord Dharma idol on the right also slammed down with a seal. Boundless destructive flames descended, soaking in the power of nirvanic extermination and burning. The black and red flames intertwined together, igniting an extremely magnificent color. That was the color of death. No one knew which was stronger between the apocalyptic flames of the great black sky demon cult and the karmic fire of the Red Lotus that belonged to the Red Lotus demon lord. However, there was no strong or weak in martial arts, but there were strong and weak people. Li Jiaodi's strength was weaker than Chu Xiu's. Under the suppression of the Buddha's mudra, the power of the apocalyptic flames slowly stripped away the Red Lotus hellfire around Li Jiaodi. At this moment, Li Jiaodi screamed, and a bloody mist bloomed around her. Under the burning of the karmic fire of the Red Lotus, it turned into a blood sword. It tore apart Chu Xiu's evil demon Buddha Dharma form and stabbed towards him. Against this attack, Chu Xiu only stretched out a finger. His inner true fire burned continuously on his finger, and there was even a crimson color moving rhythmically in Chu Xiu's hand. Under Chu Xiu's finger, Li Jiaodi's blood sword had already started to crumble before it could even stab down. In front of me, using the power of blood qi is futile. As soon as he said that, Chu Xiu took a step forward and appeared in front of Li Jiaodi in an instant. Golden and silver inner true fire bloomed around him, and at the same time, there was also the pitch-black apocalyptic flames. With the two types of flames combined, it was an extremely destructive power that was unstoppable and unavoidable. With a loud bang, Li Jiaodi was sent flying by Chu Xiu's punch. In an instant, a bloody mist dispersed, and a large amount of fresh blood flowed out of her mouth. With the strength of Chu Xiu's physical body, there were only a handful of people in the pugilistic world who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Tangya, who was standing at the back, grinned. Official Chu really doesn't know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. Even hitting a woman so viciously. Mei Qinglian turned to look at him. Tender feelings for the fairer sex? If you were to make a move on that woman, she would kill you 10 times in a quarter of an hour. Moreover, does that kind of old woman deserve to be pitied? Tangya shrugged. Like repels like. He wisely did not continue to discuss this issue with Mei Qinglian. In fact, there was one thing that Tangya was right about. Chu Xiu really did not know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. To be precise, in his eyes, there was a distinction between men and women. But when it came to a fierce battle, in his eyes, there were only those who could be killed and those who could not be killed. Why would there be any distinction between men and women? This woman, Li Jiaodi, had caused trouble for him more than once or twice. Even if she was a member of the Yinma clan, she was the kind of person who was useless and would only hold him back. So if he did not kill her now, could it be that he would keep her alive for the new year? After punching Li Jiaodi until she vomited blood, Chu Xiu took another step forward and appeared in front of Li Jiaodi in the blink of an eye. Li Jiaodi's body was covered in blood, but at this time, she was staring at Chu Xiu. There was no longer any hatred in her eyes, and it had even turned pitch black. However, a scarlet flame bloomed in her pitch black eyes. The hellfire of the Red Lotus could burn all sins in the world. The hellfire of the Red Lotus that bloomed from Li Jiaodi's eyes did not have a physical body, but in an instant, it began to burn in Chu Xiu's mind, roasting his primordial spirit. In the next moment, countless vengeful spirits that Chu Xiu had killed appeared, tearing at his primordial spirit. But at this time, Chu Xiu seemed to be unable to feel it. He sneered, "The hellfire of condemnation? What a joke! Who in this world has the right to judge me for my sins? The hellfire of the Red Lotus could burn all sins in the world. If an ordinary person's primordial spirit was roasted like this, they would probably have long gone mad. But there was clearly something wrong with Chu Xiu's current worldview. To him, he did not feel that what he had done was sinful at all. There might be good and evil in this world, but there was no good or evil in Chu Xiu's heart. The hellfire of condemnation could not punish him for his sins. He pointed a finger at the top of Li Jiaodi's head. In an instant, Li Jiaodi's body trembled. The endless hellfire of the Red Lotus began to devour her, burning her into a pile of ash in an instant. The power of the hellfire of the Red Lotus was evil and domineering, but the most important thing was the cultivation of one's state of mind. Li Jiaodi was a stubborn person. Given her personality, she actually dared to call herself the successor of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. 500 years ago, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable would not even have looked at her. Seeing that Li Jiaodi had been killed, Mei Qinglian walked over and shook her head gently. This Li Jiaodi is actually also a pitiful person. She was trapped by the tribulations of relationships when she was young, resulting in her stubborn personality. Everyone thought that she had already broken free from the tribulations of relationships, but in reality, she had never walked out of it. Just look at Lin Fengyu's character. The reason Li Jiaodi fell in love with him and was willing to die for him was because she thought of him as someone else, a person that she could never obtain in this lifetime. The word love trapped her entire life. Even though she died at your hands, in reality, she died because of the word love. Tanya, who was at the side, glanced at Mei Qinglian, not daring to speak. Just now, you were still looking down on Li Jiaodi, but now that she's dead, you're sympathizing with her. TSK, as expected of the saintess of the demonic path. How hypocritical. Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, "That's why I say that the 7 emotions and 6 desires of love are the most troublesome." Mei Qinglian tilted her head and looked at Chu Xiu. "Oh? So you're preparing to cultivate the heartless Tao?" Chu Xiu shook his head. How can it be easy to forget emotions? Moreover, if you lose the 7 emotions and 6 desires, you're not a human, but a god. It's a very extravagant thing to let a person maintain their rationality forever. Mei Qinglian said, "That's true, but you killed Li Jiaodi, so the trouble is not small. It's not the trouble on Xiang Chang's side, but the trouble in the Yinma clan. Although Li Jiaodi is not likable, she is still a big shot of the Yinma clan. You've killed her now, but you've gone too far. It's hard to guarantee that no one will come looking for trouble with you. It was forbidden to kill each other in the Yinma clan. Although this was just a slogan, there were still some open and secret fights in the dark. However, no one brought this matter to the surface. The number of Yinma clan warriors who died in the hands of Chu Xiu was not 1 or 2, but Li Jiaodi was the first one. Actually, strictly speaking, Yuan Tianfang, who was killed by Chu Xiu and Su Du last time, was the first one. However, at that time, Chu Xiu gave the credit for killing Yuan Tianfang to Su Du, and this time, Chu Xiu killed someone in public. Even if he wanted to frame him, he didn't have the chance. Chu Xiu waved his hand indifferently and said, "Looking for trouble with me? I want to see who dares to look for trouble with me today." Chu Xiu was not arrogant and ignorant, but but he had enough confidence. Among the Yinma clan, Wuxia and the Phaseless Demon sect were definitely people who could stand on his side. Even if they were dissatisfied with Qin Chaoxian's Scarlet Drill Demon sect and some rogue cultivators, would they dare to take the risk of falling out with Chu Xiu to look for trouble with him? As for those who didn't like Chu Xiu didn't need to care about them. It was fine if they didn't come, but if they did, he would kill them together. Now, it was no longer the time for Chu Xiu to need the Yinma clan. It should be said that the Yinma clan needed him, Chu Xiu. Those who were willing to cooperate with him and help him were seniors worthy of respect. Chu Xiu was also willing to give them face. But for those who couldn't see the situation clearly, who cared who they were? Just as Chu Xiu finished killing and was about to let people clean up the place, Xiang Chong also received the news and hurried over with Daoist Wuang and the others. Although he had many experts under him, Lin Fengyu was still his confidant. Li Jiaodi was also a genuine true fire spirit refinement realm expert, so he couldn't ignore her. Chapter 951. In fact, Xiang Chong was not late. He came just in time. If he had come earlier, he would have been in time for Chu Xiu to kill Li Jiaodi. Maybe he would have been involved in the battle. However, looking at Lin Fengyu's corpse on the ground and Li Jiaodi, whose body was nowhere to be seen, Xiang Chong was dumbfounded. After he reacted, he roared at Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu! How dare you!" Chu Xiu said faintly, "I have always been bold." "I wonder which part of me are you referring to, Your Highness?" Xiang Chong pointed at Chu Xiu and roared angrily while trembling, "How dare you kill Li Jiaodi?" Chu Xiu stood with his hands behind his back and asked very naturally, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Chu Xiu's bold words directly stunned Xiang Chong. Why wouldn't he dare? Could it be that he, Chu Xiu, had done any less audacious things? However, the problem was that Li Jiaodi and Lin Fengyu were his subordinates. Even if Xiang Chong was an idiot, he knew that his subordinates were killed. If he did not care, where would his prestige be? Just as he was about to say something, Daoist Wuyang pulled Xiang Chong and whispered, "Your Highness, it's best not to have a conflict with Chu Xiu for the time being." Xiang Chong looked at Daoist Wuyang in confusion. "My subordinates were killed by Chu Xiu and my face was almost swollen. How dare you tell me not to have a conflict with Chu Xiu?" Daoist Wuyang smiled bitterly and said, "Your Highness, after you ascend the throne, you can do whatever you want to Chu Xiu. However, the situation is sensitive now. What's the use of getting angry? Can you disband the Jianghu Hall or kill Chu Xiu? Even His Majesty can't do this. If you do this, it will only make the Northern Yen more chaotic. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Your Highness, you're a man who does great things. Could it be that you can't endure this little bit of time?" Xiang Chong was already relying on Daoist Wuyang. In his opinion, Daoist Wuyang was a steady and experienced man. What he said was indeed reasonable. Xiang Chong turned to Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Official Chu, do not forget that this is Northern Yen territory. You may be a man of Jianghu, but you are also the governor of the Northern Yen Jianghu clan. You are a subject of the Northern Yen. There are some rules that you have to follow." After saying that, Xiang Chong left hatefully with his men. Only Daoist Wuyang glanced at Chu Xiu before he left. There was a different look in his eyes. Mei Qinglian said at the side, "It seems that Daoist Wuyang, that old guy, is quite important to Xiang Chong." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Daoist Wuyang is considered a veteran in Jianghu. If he can't even deal with Xiang Chong, then he is too useless. All right, go back. Tell your men to withdraw their forces and return to the Jianghu Hall. Don't fight head-on against some insignificant provocations. It's not too late to settle the score in the future." Chu Xiu hadn't expected this to happen. Lin Fengyu was an idiot, so Chu Xiu wouldn't be surprised if he did something stupid. However, it was strange that the fire slave, who was usually a shrewd guy, had actually lost his mind and stayed here to fight to the death with them. Of course, this was a good thing for Chu Xiu. Although it caused some trouble, it could also let the other disciples of the Jianghu Hall feel the cohesiveness of the Jianghu Hall. Chu Xiu was preparing to reverse the situation in the Jianghu Hall at the Coronation Hall. Therefore, he kept a low profile for the rest of the time. However, the entire Yinma clan was in an uproar because of this strange matter. Chu Xiu actually killed Li Jiaodi. This matter had a huge impact on the big shots of the Yinma clan. Even Ren Xinli, who stood on the side of Chu Xiu, was speechless after hearing the news. He secretly thought that Chu Xiu was too bold. Over the years, regardless of whether it was the righteous path or the evil path, it was the biggest taboo among the taboo. Although there had never been a complete ban on fratricide, even if there was, it was done in secret. But now, Chu Xiu killed Li Jiaodi openly. What would the other people of the Yinma clan think? Not only the big shots of the Yinma clan, but even the other disciples of the Yinma clan would be affected. In their opinion, if the big shots could kill each other without any scruples, then wouldn't they also have no scruples? Therefore, as soon as this matter came out, someone immediately convened the entire Yinma clan to start a meeting. This time, they chose another place for the meeting and did not call Wuxia. In their opinion, the fair elder Wei had changed. He had become partial to Chu Xiu and ignored the interests of the Yinma clan. He was no longer one of them. In the dark underground stronghold, Situ Chi, the sect master of the ghost underworld sect, who had a conflict with Chu Xiu before, said angrily, "This is outrageous. This is outrageous. He killed his own people in public. Does Chu Xiu still care about the Yinma clan? Does he still care about the rules? There must be an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, what will become of the Yinma clan? We should just disband." Situ Chi had offended Chu Xiu before. Now that Li Jiaodi, who had also offended Chu Xiu, was dead, Situ Chi felt a little disappointed. He, Chu Xiu, really dared to kill people at all costs. The others present also agreed. Even those who had been neutral before, such as the Earth Devil Cultivator, Yu Moya, and the Ghost Dragon Cave Lord, Wu Ma Hai, felt that Chu Xiu had indeed gone too far this time. It was normal for the Yinma clan to have conflicts with each other. Even they were not of one mind. But even if they were not of one mind, they were still in an alliance and had the same label on them. Even if you killed people secretly, it would be fine. But you killed people in public. How would the righteous path look at us? How would the bright demon look at us? How shameful. Only Qin Chaoxian stood up and said, "Everyone, calm down. Although Chu Xiu is usually tough, he is not that kind of crazy person. He should know what the consequences of killing Li Jiaodi are. So, is there something hidden in this?" Qin Chaoxian's Scarlet Drill Demon sect had already formed its own clan. For him, the existence of the Yinma clan or not didn't mean much. So, maintaining the stability of the Yinma clan was the most important thing. It didn't matter who Chu Xiu killed, as long as he didn't kill him. Moreover, Qin Chaoxian also hated Li Jiaodi. They had had conflicts before. Situ Chi waved his hand and said, "Hidden story? What hidden story could make Chu Xiu kill his own people on the spot? There must be an explanation for this. Everyone, let's go to Northern Yen. Even if we ask Chu Xiu to come to Eastern Qi, he probably won't come." Then, Situ Chi glanced at Qin Chaoxian and said indifferently, "Sect Master Qin, we understand that you have a different opinion, but you better not tell Wuxia about what happened today." Qin Chaoxian nodded indifferently and said, "Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. But the Scarlet Drill Demon sect won't get involved in this matter. If you want to go to Northern Yen, you can go." Situ Chi did not force Qin Chao when he heard that he did not want to go first. In any case, they had enough people, which was enough to give Chu Xiu absolute pressure. However, Qin Chaoxian looked at their backs and shook his head slightly. These people were all itinerant cultivators. Even though Situ Chi was the sect master of the Ghost Underworld sect, there were only a few people in his sect. They didn't understand what Chu Xiu's current power represented. If they went rashly, they would only be rebuffed. He would only lower his head if he had a request. Right now, Chu Xiu did not have any requests from the Mo clan. Martial artists of the Devil Dao rarely came to the land of Northern Yen. It should be said that martial artists of the Ma clan rarely came. Because Northern Yen had the Great Light Temple and was not as big as Eastern Qi, the diabolism cultivators who came to Northern Yen were restricted. This time, many people noticed that Situ Qi had brought many diabolism cultivators to Northern Yen. The Taoist and Buddhist branches in Yanjing City had just finished a big battle, so they didn't have the energy to deal with it. The imperial court naturally noticed it, but they didn't do anything. It was even Xiang Long who gave the order. The news that Chu Xiu had killed Li Jiaodi on the street had spread. The Northern Yen imperial court didn't think that the Yinma clan was Chu Xiu's reinforcements. They were more likely to cause trouble for him. Xiang Long was happy to see Chu Xiu fall out with the Yinma clan. He couldn't be happier, so how could he stop it? At this time, Situ Qi and several Yinma clan leaders were in the hall of the Jianghu clan, but Chu Xiu hadn't come out yet. Chu Xiu didn't come out, so Mei Qinglian came to greet him. After all, she was the only one who had contact with the Yinma clan. Serving everyone a cup of tea, Wu Ma Hai said with a smile, "Little Mei, you seem to be doing well at Chu Xiu's place. It seems that you're going to use Chu Xiu's power to rebuild the Yinma clan?" Compared to the people present, Mei Qinglian was just a junior, so everyone could call her a little girl. Hearing this, Mei Qinglian shook her head, then nodded and said, "I do have this idea, but Senior Wuma, do you know how difficult it is to build a clan? I don't have the talent in this area, so I'm just waiting for an opportunity to find a few successors and let them rebuild the Yinma clan. Relying on the power of the Jianghu clan, I'll slowly develop it. When I'm strong enough, I'll be independent. Since I'm going to rebuild the clan, I'll have to be presentable. Otherwise, it'll be embarrassing to bring out a few kittens." Hearing this, Situ Qi's face immediately darkened. He felt that Mei Qinglian was indirectly scolding him. A few kittens? Wasn't she talking about his ghost underworld sect? Situ Qi coughed and said coldly, "When will Chu Xiu come out? Asking us seniors to wait for him, Chu Xiu is really arrogant. Does he really think he's the leader of the devil cult?" Chapter 952. To the current Jianghu, it was a joke to talk about seniors and juniors. Even in a sect, everyone looked at strength and not the so-called seniors and juniors. However, Situ Qi did not think that he was weaker than Chu Xiu. Moreover, so many of them were waiting here. Each of them was older than Chu Xiu by many generations. How could he, Chu Xiu, let these seniors wait for him here? What a scandal. At this moment, Chu Xiu walked in from the inner hall and walked step by step to the main seat. He looked at everyone present and did not say a word. The impatience and even dissatisfaction that they had felt just now had disappeared in an instant. To him, Chu Xiu was a junior, but what this junior had done was something that he could never do in his lifetime. At this moment, Chu Xiu was just looking at them quietly. The oppressive aura wasn't obvious, but it gave them an illusion of nervousness. They were the ones who had come to denounce him. What were they nervous about? Situ Qi snorted and said, "Chu Xiu, don't you want to explain?" Chu Xiu asked indifferently, "Explain what?" "Of course, to explain why you killed Li Jiaodi. Do you know the consequences of killing your fellow disciples? Do you know the consequences? Do you think that you are a member of the Yinma lineage?" Situ Qi's words were righteous. Those who did not know would think that he was a sect leader of a righteous sect and not a sect leader of the Yinma lineage. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "You want an explanation? Well, I will give you an explanation. Why did I kill Li Jiaodi? Because she deserved to die. Do you know what I want to do now? It is a great matter for a country. Among the three countries, Eastern Qi respects the Zhenwu sect as the national religion. Although it is vast and can accommodate the Yinma lineage, it is not a place for us to live. Although West Chu does not have a national religion, Dragon Tiger Mountain is in West Chu, and the moon-worshipping cult is also in West Chu. There is no place for my Mo bloodline to take root. Only the Northern Yen, because of Xiang Long's previous methods, had prevented the Great Light Temple from touching the northern Yen territory. If my plan succeeds this time, the northern Yen will be under my control, and my lurking devil clan will naturally be able to develop. In the end, she, Li Jiaodi, threw herself under the command of my sworn enemy, Xiang Chong. By doing this, did she ever think that she was a senior of the Ima branch? Have you ever thought of helping a junior like me? Jianghu was only so big, and there was nothing special about it. Everyone knew Li Jiaodi's previous whereabouts. For the sake of a gigolo, Li Jiaodi actually went against Chu Xiu. Previously, they were still saying that Li Jiaodi must have water in her brain. What Chu Xiu said made sense, but there was no need to kill people, right? Yumoya, who had dealt with Chu Xiu a few times before, stood up and said, "Chu, we already understand what happened, but there is no need to kill people, right? After all, we are all from the Yinma branch, so we can talk things over, right?" Chu Xiu said plainly, "Senior Yu's words are right, there is always room for discussion. However, you can ask around and see what the scene was like at that time." That woman, Li Jiaodi, had already gone crazy. I only killed a gigolo of hers, and she actually wanted to fight me to the death. It wasn't that I wanted to kill her, but she insisted on fighting me to the death. Who can she blame if she dies? This time, even Yumoya and the others were speechless. If that was the case, then they really shouldn't blame Chu Xiu. Anyway, for a demon master like Yumoya, who had cultivated for hundreds of years, love and the like were all nonsense. Was it worth it to fight to the death with a fellow sect member for a gigolo? Situ Chi said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you have quibbled so much, but in the end, there is one thing that you can't explain. Are you going to let this matter go just like that? What are the rules of the Ima branch?" Chu Xiu laughed loudly and said, "Rules? What rules? If you want rules, then I will tell you what my, Chu Xiu's, rules are." Looking coldly at Situ Chi, Chu Xiu said coldly, "If you are willing to help me with my plans, I will treat you all as fellow disciples, and after the matter is done, we will share the benefits. But if someone blocks my way, then I'm sorry, the one who blocks the way will not be a fellow disciple, but a dead person." Chu Xiu waved his hand, and Shang Tianliang, who was wearing a linen robe, walked out from the back hall with his hands behind his back, carrying a small hoe in his hand. He had originally been growing vegetables in the shopping center, but in the end, people from Yin Mo's side suddenly came, so he was suddenly called over by Chu Xiu to act cool. Looking at the people below, Chu Xiu said lightly, "I killed Li Jiaodi. That's what happened, and that's what the situation is. Now, who still wants to explain? Let me, the owner of the shopping center, explain it to everyone." Seeing this, Wuma Ji stood up, cupped his hands, and said, "Goodbye." Yumoya also cupped his hands, and said, "Sorry to disturb you." After saying that, he turned around and left. Rules were left for people who followed the rules. If someone didn't even want to follow the rules, then what was the point of having rules? Even if Chu Xiu explained the matter of killing fellow disciples to the heavens, it would still be difficult to explain. But now that Chu Xiu had pulled out the experts of the heaven and earth profound opening realm, who would dare to listen to his explanation? Situ Chi and the others were so angry that their faces turned red, but in the end, not a single one of them said anything, and directly turned around and left. This was because they really couldn't be sure if Chu Xiu would really kill them. If they had thought that Chu Xiu would care about their status as elders of the Yinma clan, but now, they could be sure that this status meant nothing to Chu Xiu. He had already killed Li Jiaodi, so he naturally wouldn't mind killing a second one. At the same time, they secretly cursed Yumoya and the others for being too weak, for being scared away. Otherwise, with so many elders of the Yinma clan threatening him, would Chu Xiu still dare to be so arrogant? After leaving Yanjing City, Situ Chi found that Yumoya and the others were still waiting there. He couldn't help but snort coldly, and said, "Everyone, what did we say before? Didn't we say that Chu Xiu must give us an explanation for this matter? Otherwise, where are the rules of the Yinma clan? In the end, you left just like that. You're a joke for no reason." Yumoya's face turned red, and he snorted coldly, "What explanation do you want? That womanly Jiaodi looked for trouble and was killed. What else can we do? If she didn't get close to Chu Xiu, would Chu Xiu still chase her all over the Jianghu? Moreover, he even brought out a profound Enlightenment realm expert. What do you want us to do? Do we really have to shed all pretense of cordiality? Although Chu Xiu doesn't abide by the rules, at least he's still a member of the Yinma clan. Elder Wei has done him a great favor. No matter how arrogant he is, he won't openly betray the Yinma clan. If we don't shed all pretense of cordiality, then we're still on the same side. If we shed all pretense of cordiality, then we'll be laughed at by everyone in the Jianghu." Situ Chi was speechless by Yumoya. In the end, he snorted coldly, "This Chu Xiu acts like a hawk and acts like a wolf. He's simply that kind of lawless person. Now, he dares to ignore the rules of the Yinma clan, but you guys are still worried about this and that, not daring to act out. I'm afraid that in the end, the entire Yinma clan will be destroyed in his hands." After saying that, Situ Chi turned around and left. He came to question them aggressively, but in the end, he was rebuffed. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. At this time, in the Jianghu Hall, Shang Tianliang didn't leave. Instead, he held a hoe and asked, "I say, are they from the same sect as you? Since they're from the same sect, why would they tear you down? You've already become like this. Why don't you quickly go your separate ways? You're actually still in the same force at the same time." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The things here are too complicated. Master Shang, you won't understand. In Green Capital, a person can't survive alone, but in the outside world, a person can also live a very comfortable life. Therefore, for a long time, without a goal, some people can only see their own immediate interests, but not the overall interests." In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was annihilated, the people of the Yinma clan were still united. Everyone was full of energy, waiting for Dugu Weiwei to return to rebuild the Kunlun devil cult. But 500 years have passed, and Dugu Weiwei hasn't returned yet. This group of people's spirit has also dispersed. Each of them has their own thoughts. It would be strange if they could unite. Shang Tianliang nodded and concluded, "To put it bluntly, you guys have nothing better to do. You're living too comfortably, so you're scheming against each other." Chu Xiu was stunned. Although Shang Tianliang's words were not pleasant to hear, it seemed to be true. If the world they were in now also became green, it was likely that no one would be scheming against each other here. Even living was exhausting, so why would they care about face and rules? "Oh right, Shang City Lord, I heard that you've been farming in Merchant City recently. This kind of thing can be handed over to the ordinary old, weak, women, and children. Why are you doing it yourself?" Shang Tianliang said plainly, "In Merchant City, the city lord also has to personally fight. Now that I'm farming, I, the city lord, naturally have to be the vanguard. And in this period of time, I've reread the records left behind by my Shang clan ancestors. I've reread the martial inheritance left behind by my Shang clan ancestors in the olden antiquity era. Heaven and earth mystic opening does not only cultivate one's body, but also this world. In Green Capital, the world was already broken, the world I cultivated was not complete. But here, I started to comprehend this world anew, and comprehended something different." As he spoke, a green light flashed in Shang Tianliang's hand and seeped into the ground. In the next moment, something that looked like a weed actually cracked the tiles on the ground and grew tenaciously. A single spark can start a prairie fire. A weed cannot be burned by a wildfire. As long as there is a trace of vitality, it can grow again. The world is too big, so big that as long as you can comprehend a little bit of it, you can enjoy endless benefits. I'm farming, but what I'm plowing is my own dantian." After saying that, Shang Tianliang continued to walk out with his little hoe. There was no trace of the fierce aura that he had in Merchant City. Instead, he had an otherworldly and elegant aura, as if he was an otherworldly expert. Chu Xiu looked at the cracked tiles and the weeds that were half a person tall, and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The Jianghu Hall's lobby had just been renovated not long ago. should he pay for it? Or should he pay for it? Chapter 953. In the Great Hall of the Northern Yan Imperial Palace. It was still dark in the Northern Yan, so most of the palaces were gloomy and depressing. But today, the atmosphere in the Northern Yan Imperial Palace was even more depressing, because Xianglong was on the verge of collapsing. Dozens of core members of the Northern Yan Xiang royal family were gathered in the palace. Xianglong lay on the bed, his breathing extremely low. Several imperial physicians were in a flurry, sweating profusely from exhaustion. But they didn't dare to stop, afraid that they would be dragged to the grave with him. Among the Northern Yan royal family present, except for his younger brother who hated Xianglong, the others didn't seem sad. In fact, they were very indifferent. The emperor and the royal family were two different concepts. In Northern Yan, only the direct descendants of Xianglong's bloodline could take over the throne. Even if the people of his bloodline were all trash, they still had to let a trash take over the throne, because they were the direct descendants. As for the other Northern Yan royal families, they might have been direct descendants of the royal family, but since their ancestors were in theft, they were only members of the Xiang royal family. To them, the so-called royal family was more like a noble family. They worked hard for the Xiang royal family and contributed their strength, while the emperor had to use the power of the entire royal family to support them in order to maintain his position. That was the simple relationship between the two sides. So seeing Xianglong die, they didn't feel sad or happy. After all, as long as the next emperor could bring them enough benefits, it was enough. But just because they weren't sad didn't mean that Xiangchong wasn't sad. Xiangchong had never been a cold-blooded person, so when he saw Xianglong and his elder brother fighting for the throne, he was very sad and hated Xianglong. But now, seeing Xianglong on the verge of death, although he still hated Xianglong, he was still sad. After working for half a day, the imperial physicians looked at each other and said to Xiangchong, "Your Highness, we have exhausted all our strength. His Majesty is like a lamp that has run out of oil, and his spirit is starting to dissipate. It's not something that can be cured, even with the 9 revolutions divine pill." "Can Imperial Brother speak again?" Xiangchong asked, suppressing the pain in his heart. One of the imperial physicians nodded and said, "That's possible, but forcibly stimulating His Majesty's spirit will cause His Majesty's spirit to dissipate even faster." Xiangchong hesitated for a moment, but he still nodded and said, "Go, let Imperial Brother leave a few final words." The Grand Physician nodded. He took out a silver needle and pierced several major acupoints on Xianglong's body. Xianglong, who had originally seemed like a dead man, coughed twice. His lifeless gaze turned to Xiangchong. The corners of his mouth curved as he weakly said, "You finally call me Imperial Brother again." Hearing Xianglong's first words, Xiangchong's eyes immediately reddened. "Imperial Brother, what else do you want to say?" Xiangchong grabbed Xianglong's hand and asked. Xianglong weakly shook his head. "It's all been arranged. There's nothing more to say. We have already done our best. Once Chong'er ascends to the throne, we will have to rely on him." At this point, Xianglong suddenly grasped Xiangchong's hand tightly. As if using all his strength, he spat out his last words, "We are not willing. But I don't regret it." As his voice fell, Xianglong's vitality completely dissipated. Xiangchong could no longer hold back his tears. Imperial Brother. The merits and demerits of Xianglong's life were no longer clear. As an elder brother, he had killed his own brother to seize the throne, showing no mercy to his elder brother who shared the same mother. He could be said to be cold-blooded to the extreme. As a father, because he was busy with the affairs of the empire, even his most beloved son, Xiangchong, had not received much guidance from him. This had also caused his sons to be at odds with each other on the surface and in their hearts, causing the brothers to turn on each other. But as the emperor of the Northern Yan, he was qualified, even outstanding. The Northern Yan had originally been just one of the many small kingdoms in the world. If not for Xianglong, even if Eastern Qi had a useless emperor, the size of Eastern Qi alone would have been enough to sweep through the world, destroying all the small kingdoms and unifying the world. But because of the existence of the Northern Yan, Xianglong was able to unite the Northern Yan pugilistic world, West Chu, and any other forces that could be allied with. In the end, they managed to block the expansion of Eastern Qi, creating a tripartite balance of power in the world. He was unwilling because the current emperors of the world were all mediocre. As long as he was given time, Eastern Qi could not sweep through the world, but he could. Eastern Qi could not unify the world, but he could. He had no regrets because even if he, Xianglong, was despised by millions of people, even if he was treated as an enemy by his own younger brother for the rest of his life, he would still make the same choice if he was given the chance to do it again. Whether it was his merits or demerits, it was up to the later generations to judge. In any case, he, Xianglong, had no regrets in this life. In the 62nd year of the Northern Yan Zhaowu, Xianglong passed away. Before Xianglong's death, the Northern Yan experienced a period of peace. But following his death, the entire Northern Yan began to stir. Xianglong did not summon any princes before his death. His posthumous edict had already been written. If nothing went wrong, the next step would be Xiang Chang's ascension to the throne. But how could things go so smoothly? In the Crown Prince's palace, Xiang Chong was overjoyed despite his sorrow. This day had finally come. Xiang Li was in his residence. When he heard the news, he immediately locked himself in a dark room and refused to see anyone. The final moment had finally arrived. If he succeeded, he would reach the peak. If he failed, he would kill himself as soon as possible. Xiang Chong would even make sure he died a horrible death. In the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu was expressionless because he had been planning for this day for a long time. Victory or defeat, success or failure, all depended on this one move. After Xianglong's death, the funeral had to be held first. After the funeral, it would be Xiang Chang's ascension ceremony. In the palace, the Northern Yan royalty, the military, and some noble generals had all gathered. As the governor of the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu naturally stood at the head of the table. Other than the Northern Yan people, Shi Yunzi, Mako Mori, and Su Yan from the Chunyang Dao sect had also come. However, both parties were still injured and had yet to recover. This time, they had come purely to watch the ceremony. They were still hostile towards each other. The dragon throne was suspended in the air. On the high platform, an old man with white hair and beard walked out slowly with Xianglong's posthumous edict in his hand. He was the oldest member of the Xiang royal family. Although he was not very strong and was nearing the end of his life, he still needed to preside over this kind of occasion. Xiang Chong knelt on the ground. As the 13th prince, he was kneeling in front of everyone. The other princes looked at Xiang Chong with complicated gazes. Although the 13th prince was special and was the favorite of Xianglong, no one had thought that he would be the one to ascend to the throne in the end. Of course, other than jealousy, they had no other thoughts. Among all of Xianglong's sons, Xiang Li had the greatest advantage previously. Even if Xiang Li couldn't get the position, it wouldn't be their turn anyway. Therefore, the princes present were only jealous, but not resentful. At this moment, although Xiang Chong also lowered his head, there was only one thing in his eyes. It was the dazzling dragon throne at the front, the position that would soon belong to him. Although the dragon throne was not beautiful or luxurious, because it had been used for years, some of the dragon patterns on the throne had even been worn away. However, that position represented power. The power to control the entire Northern Yan Emperor. Previously, all of this was only in his dreams. Now that it had appeared in front of him, how could Xiang Chong not be nervous? He was so nervous that he was trembling slightly. The ancestor of the Xiang royal family stood at the front and said in an old but powerful voice, "Xiang Chong, His Majesty has passed away. Before he left, he appointed you as the crown prince. I hope you will not disappoint him. Among the 3 countries in the world, Northern Yan doesn't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. But under the leadership of His Majesty, we've managed to protect this land. Now that His Majesty has passed away, the burden will be on your shoulders. Are you confident? Xiangcheng hurriedly bowed and said, "Of course I am confident. With father's will before me, I will definitely inherit father's will and lead the Northern Yen to sweep across the world and unify the Central Plains." The ancestor of the Xiang royal family nodded and was about to read out Xiang Long's posthumous edict for Xiangcheng to officially ascend to the throne. However, at this moment, a voice rang out at an inopportune time, "Your Highness is confident, but I am not." Sweep across the world? I am afraid that within a few years of your ascension, the Northern Yen will be destroyed by you. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. Chu Xiu casually stepped forward without the slightest hesitation, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Mako Mori and Su Yen raised their heads at the same time and looked at each other. Had Chu Xiu gone mad? He openly opposed Xiangcheng's ascension and interfered in the affairs of the Northern Yen royal family. He was making an enemy of the entire Northern Yen dynasty. Xiangcheng shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! What are you trying to do? This is the imperial court's coronation ceremony, not a place where you can talk nonsense. Are you trying to rebel?" Chu Xiu said coldly, "Rebel? Your Highness, the Xiang royal family is the Northern Yen royal family and the ruler of Northern Yen, but don't forget that we also live in Northern Yen and are part of Northern Yen. I am not rebelling. When His Majesty was still alive, even if I had some differences with His Majesty, have you ever seen me say no? His Majesty is a great ruler, and we can rest assured that the Northern Yen is in his hands. However, this crown prince is not a good ruler. Letting him control Northern Yen will be a disaster. I have no intention of rebelling, and I will not rebel. However, I would like to ask all of you to consider this carefully. Is such a person really suitable to inherit the throne? His Majesty's eyes were failing him before his death, and he could not see through a person's heart. That is why he chose such a person. A good ruler can lead the Northern Yen from a small barbarian kingdom to the point where they are now fighting against Eastern Qi. But what about an unqualified emperor? That is a disaster. Don't forget how Eastern Qi replaced the Jiang family in the past. The emperor's surname can be Xiang, but it does not have to be Xiangcheng. Chapter 954. Xiangcheng was not surprised by Chu Xiu's sudden appearance. Because Xiang Long had already said that Chu Xiu would not sit still and wait for death. But it did not matter. Chu Xiu alone could not shake the entire Northern Yen imperial court. It would not matter even if he pulled in the Yinma clan. Xiang Long had been guarding against Chu Xiu when he introduced the Daoist and Buddhist sects. But when they heard Chu Xiu mention the matter of Eastern Qi replacing the Jiang clan, all the Northern Yen royalty's expressions changed. This matter could be said to be a taboo among all the royalty. In the past, the fight for the throne was only between the direct descendants. Regarding this matter, neither the Xiang royalty nor the other royalty would stop it. How could there be no bloodshed in the fight for the throne? Only the one who obtained the throne through bloodshed could be considered a true emperor. Of course, there were also cases where there was no bloodshed. But there were only two possibilities. One was that the one who obtained the throne was too strong, causing others to lose the confidence to compete. Another possibility was that the people of this generation were too weak, so weak that they couldn't even fight. Therefore, to the royalty, the fight for the throne was very normal. Previously, when Xiang Long killed his elder brother to obtain the throne, this patriarch of the Xiang royalty, who was preparing to read the edict, did not even participate. He did not even say a word. Only when the situation was set and Xiang Long had killed all the competitors did he come out to preside over Xiang Long's ascension ceremony. He read some messy things and acted as a mascot for a day. No matter how fierce and bloody the fights were, they were fights between people with the same surname. But this time, Eastern Qi's subordinate actually changed the emperor. The Great Eastern Qi directly changed the country's surname. This was something that was very difficult to accept. What did Chu Xiu mean by this? Xiangcheng said coldly, "Chu Xiu, do you also want the Northern Yen to be surnamed Chu?" Xiangcheng jumped out and yelled, "Men! Take down Chu Xiu! Arrest this traitor!" At this moment, Xiang Chong hated Chu Xiu to the core. Originally, his side was already prepared to ascend the throne, but this guy actually jumped out to cause trouble. He deserved to die, he really deserved to die. Xiang Chong was now considered the crown prince. His words were of course very effective. A group of experts from the Imperial Consecration Hall came out of nowhere and stared at Chu Xiu and the people from the Jianghu Hall with cold expressions. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What? You won't even give me a chance to say a word? Your Highness, I don't want the entire northern Yan to bear the surname Chu, nor am I interested in the Xiang family's territory. Today, I just want to tell you that although Xiang Chong was chosen by His Majesty's decision is not completely correct. At the very least, regarding the matter of the successor, he was wrong, gravely wrong. Your Highness has always been in charge of the imperial family's Hall of Masters, but that won't do. Your Highness, have you forgotten the people Xiang Chong placed in the Hall of Masters? Xiang Chong's biggest weakness is that he can't tolerate others. He can't even trust you, his imperial uncle, so who else can he trust? General Bei Gong, don't you have any opinions?" Hearing this, the expressions of Bei Gong Bailey and the others changed slightly. If Chu Xiu didn't stand out to say this today, they wouldn't have said much. But the fact that Xiang Chong had interfered with their power was like a thorn in their hearts. Don't use those you doubt, and don't doubt those you use. Xiang Long could already be considered as a suspicious person, but he almost never planted any spies in the military. This was because he knew that the Northern Yan Kingdom was won by these people in the military. If he forced them too much, he would be the one to suffer. The only spy was Xiang Wu, but Xiang Wu also sat in this position with his own ability. As for him, the other people in the 5 armies of the state also recognized him. Although there was a saying that a new emperor brings his own ministers, Xiang Chong hadn't even become the emperor yet, but he had already gone too far. When he really ascended the throne, would there still be a way out for them? Bei Gong Bailey's expression didn't change. As long as you, Chu Xiu, don't rebel, everything is negotiable. Chu Xiu laughed and said, "I've already said that I'm not interested in the Xiang family's territory. The Jianghu Hall is also a part of the Northern Yan court. What I want is only the stability of the Northern Yan court. Xiang Chong isn't suitable to be the emperor. There are many people waiting for him. Your Highness Xiang Li, don't you think so?" Xiang Li, who had been kneeling among the princes, stood up and tidied his clothes. His expression was calm, and he stood beside Chu Xiu without saying a word. Before the coronation ceremony began, he was full of panic and almost broke down. But when the day came, he suddenly calmed down. Life and death, success and failure, riches and honor were up to the heavens. If he didn't do it, he would die. If he did it, he might as well let go of everything and follow Chu Xiu to the end. At this moment, when everyone saw Xiang Li standing behind Chu Xiu, they were really surprised. Even Xiang Chong didn't expect this. The relationship between these two was too secretive. It should be said that they had not contacted each other many times. So in the eyes of others, these two were not compatible at all. How did they get together? Moreover, they had heard that Chu Xiu seemed to have a grudge against Xiang Li. Why did he want to help Xiang Li ascend the throne now? Chu Xiu didn't care about the thoughts of the people present. He just pointed at Xiang Li and said, "I believe everyone is very familiar with the second prince, so I won't say much. Previously, you didn't feel that the second prince is good. Now, compared to Xiang Chong, who is more suitable to be the emperor?" The military martialists and nobles looked at each other with different expressions. Of course, they were very familiar with Xiang Li. Previously, they had all thought that Xiang Li would succeed the throne. So even if they didn't swear loyalty to him, they were very close to him. In all fairness, whether it was scheming, or ability, Xiang Li was worlds apart from Xiang Long. As the emperor of Northern Yan, his ability was not considered outstanding. It could only be said that he was not too stupid. Therefore, the people did not have any feelings for him. It was only because he was the one who had the most hope of inheriting the throne that everyone sided with him. However, compared to Xiang Chong, the people could feel Xiang Li's strong points. Xiang Li's strong point was that although he wasn't outstanding, he didn't think too much of himself. He had always regarded himself as the heir of the Northern Yan. Therefore, every move he made was in accordance with his identity as the crown prince of the Northern Yan. Although he wasn't outstanding, he didn't make too many mistakes. Xiang Chong was a typical negative example. The more he did, the more mistakes he made. After a moment of silence, Beigong Bailey said, "I won't participate in the royal family's disputes. The Eastern Mountain Army will forever be loyal to the Northern Yan and His Majesty." Chu Xiu couldn't help but praise Beigong Bailey for being smart. Mad Butcher Beigong Bailey was very famous in the three countries. He was an absolute god of war. However, he wasn't a brute. On the contrary, he was very smart. As long as the Xiang family was vying for the throne, it was an internal dispute. Who cared who was behind them? He wouldn't participate. In any case, as long as the person who eventually ascended the throne was still surnamed Xiang, the Eastern Mountain Army would be loyal to the Northern Yan court. He was loyal to the Northern Yan Emperor. As for who the Northern Yan Emperor was, it didn't matter. Xiang Chong's heart sank when he heard Beigong Bailey's words. What made Xiang Chong's heart even colder was that the other generals of the 5 armies also expressed that they had the same attitude as Beigong Bailey. Xiang Chong couldn't help but look at Xiang Wu. This man was a member of the Xiang family. He was different from the other outsiders. But Xiang Wu only chuckled. "I knew it. Every time we choose an emperor, there'll be a commotion like this. I'm used to it. Everyone, fight to your heart's content. Whoever wins will be the emperor. We're all waiting to see the result." Earlier in the restaurant, Xiang Wu had already complained to Chu Xiu about Xiang Chong. Although that person was also surnamed Xiang, it was a pity that he had never seen himself as a member of the Xiang dynasty. Xiang Wu did not have much ambition, but he had been in Jianghu since he was young. He was like a wild dog that protected its food. If someone dared to touch the banana on his plate, even if that person's surname was Xiang, he would still dare to bite that person. Seeing that the 5 armies and the nobles were all silent, Xiang Chong couldn't help but curse in his heart. These people were really unreliable. Luckily, he was prepared. "Daoist Wuyang!" Xiang Chong roared. Daoist Wuyang walked over unhurriedly from the back. With his strength and status, he naturally couldn't be at the front of the line. He could only wait at the back. "Your Highness, what business do you have?" Daoist Wuyang held his hands up and looked at Xiang Chong with a hint of mockery in his eyes. At this moment, Xiang Chong did not even notice that something was wrong with Daoist Wuyang. He immediately said, "Order all the subordinates of the Crown Prince Palace to act. Take my token and mobilize the 5 armies of the kingdom to kill the rebels." He had previously planted many people into the 5 armies. Now, they could finally be put to use. Hearing this, the expressions of Beigong Bailey and the others became even uglier. They were confident that the 5 armies had been controlled like an iron bucket by him. No one else could mobilize them. But Xiang Chong's attitude of disregarding them still made these generals very dissatisfied and angry. Daoist Wuyang only smiled coldly after hearing Xiang Chong's words. He didn't move. Xiang Chong frowned and said, "What are you waiting for?" "What are you waiting for?" Chu Xiu stepped forward and said calmly, "Of course he's waiting for my order." A smile appeared on Daoist Wuyang's face. He walked to Chu Xiu's side and cupped his fists at him and Xiang Li, official Chu, second prince. Seeing this, Xiang Chong felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His face instantly turned pale. Chapter 955. Xiang Chong did not expect Daoist Wuyang's betrayal at all. He simply stood there in a daze, his expression fluctuating between clear and dark, filled with hatred. He had thought that he treated Daoist Wuyang as a trusted aide. But now, Daoist Wuyang had betrayed him. The others present were also unable to react. Just how did Daoist Wuyang end up with Chu Xiu? People like Beigong Bailey were no strangers to Taoist Wuyang. He had been in northern Yen for decades. When Chu Xiu first came to northern Yen, he had fought a fierce battle over the ownership of the subduing martial hall. Taoist Wuyang had suffered a great loss. How did the two of them end up together? Xiang Chong seemed to think of something. He glared at Taoist Wuyang and said, "That means the people you found are all traitors." Taoist Wuyang said indifferently, "Traitor is not the right word to use. They have never been loyal to you, so how can they betray you?" Xiang Chong clenched his teeth and suddenly said to Beigong Bailey and the others, "Great General Beigong, I was rash before. What I did was all because Taoist Wuyang bewitched me. All of you have seen it now. The people I placed with you are not my trusted aides, but traitors sent by Chu Xiu." Hearing those words, everyone on scene shook their heads. Even the people from the Xiang dynasty furrowed their brows. Xiang Chong was already panicking. In his panic, he dared to say anything. Although Chu Xiu had openly stood up for Xiang Li to seize the throne, he was still the crown prince of northern Yen. In the end, the crown prince of a country was apologizing to his own official. How vexing. Although even Xiang Long had to be courteous to someone as powerful as Beigong Bailey in the past, as the emperor, Xiang Long would only exchange benefits with Beigong Bailey. He wouldn't plead with his subjects. At that moment, Xiang Chong's panicked appearance was indeed a bit shameful for the Xiang dynasty. Moreover, Xiang Chong also said that the people he planted were all spies sent by Chu Xiu and had nothing to do with him. This was even more ridiculous. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that even if this matter was instigated by Daoist Wuyang, even if the traitors were Chu Xiu's men, Xiang Chong had not discovered it and even treated them as his trusted aides. What was this? This was a bad judgment of people. Moreover, at that time, you didn't even know that they were traitors. In the end, you were bewitched by them, and you directly agreed to plant people there. Aren't you still trying to seize power? Does that mean that if these people are really your henchmen, it's reasonable for you to arrange for them to seize power? It would have been better if Xiang Chong hadn't said this. Now that he'd said it, Beigong Bailey and the others had an even lower impression of him. Chu Xiu turned to Xiang Li and said, "Your Highness, it's your turn. Speak." Xiang Li nodded and took a deep breath. He walked out and said, "Imperial Uncle, I've always thought this position was mine. Now that Imperial Father has given it to Xiang Chong, I can't accept it and I can't accept it. Now you've seen what kind of person Xiang Chong is. Imperial Father is wise and mighty, but he's not a god after all. There are times when he makes mistakes." Xiang Chong snorted coldly and said, "You mean to say that it's right for you to be the emperor? Xiang Long, you colluded with Chu Xiu to help you seize the throne. Who knows how many northern Yen interests you've betrayed? Do you think I'm an idiot?" Xiang Li shook his head and said, "Imperial Uncle, I've never betrayed the northern Yen interests. I've only cooperated with official Chu. I've said it before. What Imperial Father has done is not necessarily right. Especially in the end, he still used the same method he used decades ago to check and balance each other. It's useless now. Everyone knows official Chu's strength and the forces behind him. Instead of forcing official Chu to rebel, why not cooperate with him? The country belongs to the Xiang family, the Jianghu belongs to official Chu. When the time comes, official Chu will lead the northern Yen Jianghu. Even if eastern Qi invades again, the northern Yen Jianghu will stand a chance. Aren't you afraid that Chu Xiu won't keep his promise?" Xiang Li nodded and said, "Of course I am. But there's nothing in this world that's guaranteed. In the past, when Imperial Father decided to cooperate with the northern Yen Jianghu, there were also many who opposed it. How do you know it won't work if you don't try? Imperial Uncle, old ancestor, both of you are the pillars of the Xiang dynasty. If I do something wrong, you can depose me at any time as you wield the 9-dragon seal. Could it be that you are still worried about this?" Xiang Li's words were very sincere. He even mentioned the matter of deposing an emperor. The northern Yen emperor can be deposed, and it's very simple. The Nine-Dragon Seal is one of the trump cards of the northern Yan Jianghu. When the emperor is combined with the Nine-Dragon Seal, he can bestow the power of the dragon vein to the Nine-Dragon Seal. But as an emperor, even if he had some foundation in martial arts before he ascended to the throne, it was all wasted after he ascended to the throne. He has no ability to control the Nine-Dragon Seal. Therefore, the Nine-Dragon Seal has always been controlled by the experts of the Xiang royal family. Once the current emperor is found to be muddle-headed and there's a risk of weakening the dynasty, the Xiang royal family can vote on whether or not to depose the emperor. The result of this is that the Nine-Dragon Seal will temporarily lose its effect. Only after the new emperor ascends to the throne can the Nine-Dragon Seal be used again. Moreover, the new emperor must be a direct descendant of the Xiang royal family. This rule was set by the founding ancestors of the Northern Yan dynasty. It has been like this since the day the Nine-Dragon Seal was created. It was to prevent the muddle-headed descendants from bringing the Northern Yan dynasty into decline. This matter has always been a thorn in the heart of the Northern Yan emperors. Usually, they don't even dare to mention it. Of course, the Xiang royal family doesn't dare to use this power recklessly. They are all members of the royal family. If one falls, all falls. It's not worth it to depose the emperor for no reason and cause the Nine-Dragon Seal to lose its effect temporarily. Xiang Li has reached a dead end. If he can't become the emperor, he will die. For this reason, he has already sold the Jianghu of the Northern Yan to Chu Xiu. Now, it's not a problem for him to hand over his life and future to the Xiang royal family. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and said, "Your Highness, Xiang Chong even dares to plant his men in the Imperial High Worship Hall and fight for power. You can imagine what he is thinking. This is a classic example of internal strife and external strife. As an emperor, his vision was not limited to this small territory, but the entire world. Is it really worth it to choose such a person as the heir of the Northern Yan dynasty? The posthumous edict is in your hands. One word and the Northern Yan throne can be changed. At this moment, everyone is looking at Xiang Chong. Chu Xiu is right. The key to the Northern Yan throne lies in Xiang Chong. Chu Xiu's underhanded tricks have caused Xiang Chong to completely offend the military and Northern Yan nobles. Xiang Chong's performance just now has disappointed everyone. As an emperor, you can be mediocre, even if you are mediocre to the level of Eastern Qi Lu Hao Chang. In a dynasty, most people are not mediocre. In any aspect, as long as you are willing to delegate power, anything can be solved. But Xiang Chong's problem is that although he is not too mediocre, he is too scheming. His flaws are also very obvious. Such a person as an emperor can easily ruin everything. At present, the only force that has the strength to fight against Chu Xiu and his men is the Imperial High Worship Hall. It is the most elite force of the Northern Yan royal family. Apart from the Imperial High Worship Hall, a number of experts in the Northern Yan Inner Palace are now under Xiang Chong's control. Even the Nine-Dragon Seal is in his hands. Before Xiang Long died, the only right thing he did was to hand over all his power to Xiang Chong. Although Xiang Chong has always hated his brother, among all the Northern Yan royals, only Xiang Chong can be trusted. Under everyone's gaze, Xiang Chong immediately felt a great deal of pressure. Xiang Chong looked at him nervously, while Chu Xiu also looked at him intently. In fact, no matter what Xiang Chong chooses, he will not be at a disadvantage. With the Northern Yan Imperial High Worship Hall in hand and the power Xiang Long has given him, he can even be said to be the most powerful person in the Northern Yan royal family. The ancestor of the Xiang family is only senior and can be used as a mascot. In terms of power, he cannot compare to Xiang Chong. Therefore, no matter who inherits the throne, Xiang Chong can sit back and relax. Deep down, Xiang Chong is indeed dissatisfied with Xiang Chong. What Xiang Chong has done has touched his bottom line. But when he thought of Xiang Long's face before his death and his instructions, Xiang Chong could not bring himself to say this. After a long while, Xiang Chong sighed. Xiang Li, Chu Xiu, stop. There has been enough bloodshed in the fight for the throne. My brother's generation has been miserable enough. I don't want to see the next generation continue like this. Xiangli, I know what you are worried about. You are worried that Xiang Chong will harm you after he ascends the throne. You can rest assured about this. I can guarantee that Xiang Chong will absolutely not touch a single hair on your head. And Chu Xiu, I know what Jianghu Hall has done for the Northern Yan. My brother is too suspicious. He can't let go of his power tactics even before his death, so he has tried his best to suppress Jianghu Hall. As long as you, Chu Xiu, can guarantee that Jianghu Hall will not betray the Northern Yan, then all the means that my brother has set to suppress Jianghu Hall will be invalid. Even if Xiang Chong ascends the throne, I will guarantee the interests of Jianghu Hall. Hearing Xiang Chong say this, Chu Xiu shook his head. Before the coronation hall, Chu Xiu had already made countless deductions about everyone's position, how they would choose, and how he should deal with it. It could be said that so far, everything was similar to what Chu Xiu had expected. The only thing that he had missed was Xiang Chong's choice. Because in Chu Xiu's view, Xiang Chong was sentimental and was a different kind of person from Xiang Long. He might not agree with Xiang Long's plan. Moreover, Xiang Chong had indeed placed people in the Imperial Consecrator Hall. Even when Xiang Chong personally came to reprimand him, Xiang Chong did not take it seriously. It could be said that he had offended Xiang Chong badly. But Chu Xiu did not expect that Xiang Chong was too sentimental. Even at this point, he still chose to protect the successor that Xiang Long had appointed. Chapter 956. Xiang Chong's choice was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's expectations, but Chu Xiu was not surprised at all. In his calculations, there were various possibilities. Xiang Chong chose to continue carrying out Xiang Long's posthumous edict and make Xiang Chong the crown prince. Chu Xiu had also calculated this. As for the solution, it was very simple. Fight with strength. How could there be no bloodshed and no deaths in the fight for the throne? Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and shook his head slightly. Your Highness, sometimes you are too naive. Do you think you can protect Xiangli? When Xiang Chong ascends to the throne, you don't know what he will look like and how much power he will have. Killing is always simpler than protecting a person. As for the promise you made to Jianghu Hall, I don't believe it either. The hatred between Xiang Chong and me has already been formed. If you were the emperor, would you be willing to watch a guy who has a grudge against you wander around under your nose all day long? Anyway, I don't want to. Xiang Chong said in a deep voice, Chu Xiu, are you really determined to intervene in the Northern Yan royal family struggle? And Xiangli, you don't believe me, your imperial uncle. Are you going to believe an outsider? Chu Xiu shook his head. I am not intervening in the royal family struggle. I just want to protect myself. I have put in a lot of effort in Jianghu Hall. I don't want to waste all this effort. Xiangli looked at Xiang Chong and then at Chu Xiu. He gritted his teeth and chose to continue standing behind Chu Xiu. In fact, he only wanted to save his life. If Xiang Chong had said that he could save his life, he would not have cooperated with Chu Xiu. But at this moment, it was already too late. Both sides had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Moreover, he could be considered to have witnessed the true hypocrisy of the world. Even this imperial uncle who claimed to be able to protect him was, in fact, unreliable. He and the others had already revealed their true intentions and had the strength to threaten Xiang Chong's position. Only then did Xiang Chong say that he could protect him. Why didn't he say this before? At the end of the day, everything depended on strength. But now, his subordinates had either left or dispersed, and they did not have much strength left. His only reliance was Chu Xiu. If he did not follow Chu Xiu closely, who else could he follow? When he saw this scene, Xiang Chong took a deep breath and said, Fine, fine, fine. Since it's like this, then don't blame me. It is not so easy to intervene in the battle of the Northern Yan royal family. Chu Xiu, after this battle, your Jianghu Hall will have no place in Northern Yan. And Xiangli, you should know what the loser of the battle of the imperial family is like. At that time, even if I wanted to protect you, I wouldn't be able to. Now. As Xiang Chang's voice fell, hundreds of experts from the Imperial Consecrator Hall surrounded the entire hall. Eunuch Han, General Zhang. As Xiang Chang's voice fell, Eunuch Han nodded directly. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen old eunuchs exuding a cold aura walked out. Each of them was above the real pellet state. These eunuchs did not belong to the Imperial Consecrator Hall, nor did they belong to the Northern Yen royal family. They were all Xiang Long's own forces, and now they were handed over to Xiang Chong. At this time, another team of elite soldiers in golden armor came, and their momentum was not weak. They were all the Imperial guards who guarded the Imperial city, and they also listened directly to Xiang Long's orders. Of course, they were now handed over to Xiang Chong. In the entire Imperial city, the forces left by Xiang Long had been mobilized. Not to mention that only Chu Xiu jumped out at the moment. Even if everyone jumped out to oppose Xiang Chang's succession, he was confident that he could stop them all. Beigong Bailey and others all retreated to the side. They didn't think about getting involved in this matter. Anyway, in the end, whoever sat on the dragon throne, they would just call him His Majesty. But at this time, some people found that they retreated, but some people didn't. These people were strong and weak, but no matter how strong they were all the backbone figures of the major forces. Otherwise, they wouldn't be qualified to participate in the coronation ceremony. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and sneered, Your Highness, His Majesty left you so much power to stabilize the Northern Yen Imperial Court, not to let you fight among yourselves. Xiang Chong snorted coldly and didn't speak, but the 9-dragon seal was already in his hand. The Imperial Consecrator Hall, and the Imperial Guards had already rushed toward the Jianghu Hall people under Chu Xiu. In a place like the coronation ceremony, Chu Xiu naturally couldn't bring all the Jianghu Hall people. There were only a dozen people who were qualified to participate in the coronation ceremony. They were either the upper echelons of the Jianghu Hall or the backbone figures, like the fire slaves. With so many people, it was enough to deal with Chu Xiu. Now Xiang Li's only reliance was Chu Xiu. As long as Chu Xiu and Jianghu Hall were dealt with, the battle for the throne would come to an end. At this moment, Chu Xiu also said faintly, Do it. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the martial artists who didn't retreat among the forces before rushed toward the people of the Imperial Consecrator Hall. There were also the merchant city martial artists that Chu Xiu had placed in the major forces. Although the strength of those people in the merchant city was weaker than the martial artists of the same rank, their realm was still there. 2 real fire spirit refinement state, 6 real pellet state. Even if it was a weakened version, their power was still amazing. This time, not only did Xiang Chang's expression change, but even the other people present did not know when Chu Xiu had shoved all these people over to them. In fact, Chu Xiu took a long time to make this move. It had started from the first conflict with Xiang Long. Although Chu Xiu knew the heavens sun gazing at air technique, he didn't know divination. He didn't expect Xiang Long to die so quickly. At that time, Chu Xiu was just preparing for a rainy day. Although this day might not come, it would definitely come. Therefore, Chu Xiu used his relationship with Xiang Li to place these Yinma lineage martial artists, to be precise, Wei Shi's lineage, into various forces of the Northern Yen Imperial Court. At that time, Xiang Li was still a prince, and there were many people around him. Moreover, he didn't place these people to seize power. They all started from the bottom, so they didn't attract attention at all. It wasn't until this time that they were finally exposed. Wolf's ambition. Xiang Chong shouted angrily, and the 9-dragon seal in his hand rotated. In an instant, the aura of heaven and earth in the entire hall was devoured. Even a black dragon was condensed in the sky above the imperial city, and it swept toward Chu Xiu with its tail. The strike of the black dragon's tail was simply the ultimate speed, and it even had the power to tear the space. Just as Chu Xiu wanted to make a move, the tail had already appeared in front of him. The internal strength, real fire, and Buddha's light bloomed at the same time, but the next moment, Chu Xiu was directly knocked out of the palace by this blow. With Chu Xiu's current physical cultivation, he wasn't injured even though he blocked it in a hurry. It was just that his internal organs were shaken, and his blood flow wasn't smooth. But at this time, he was shocked by the power of the Nine-Dragon Seal. The power of heaven and earth was extremely pure, and it was simply unstoppable. The collision even gave Chu Xiu the illusion that he was fighting against heaven and earth. No wonder this thing was known as one of the Northern Yan's trump cards. Now, just by looking at its power, Chu Xiu was convinced that it definitely had the power to fight against an ethereal enlightenment realm cultivator. More importantly, the Nine-Dragon Seal controlled the power of the Northern Yan Dragon Vein. This was Yanjing City, and although Chu Xiu didn't know where the Dragon Vein was, he was sure that it was in Yanjing City. Here, the Nine-Dragon Seal could exert the strongest power. Just then, a powerful aura suddenly descended outside the imperial city. Shang Tianliang walked through the air. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on solid ground, causing ripples to form on the ground. Compared to the time when he fought Rama, the aura on Shang Tianliang's body was now completely different. His whole person seemed to be integrated into this world, and he looked very harmonious and natural. The ethereal enlightenment realm was indeed worthy of being called the ethereal enlightenment realm. Those who could cultivate to this realm, regardless of their strength, had a strong understanding of heaven and earth to an abnormal degree. Not long after, Shang Tianliang had begun to adapt to the rules of this world, and even began to reshape his own martial arts. Last time in the Jianghu Hall, Shang Tianliang demonstrated a secret method of condensing vitality. Although it broke Chu Xiu's floor tiles, it was indeed an amazing move. Counting the countless martial art practitioners in the Jianghu, their powers were all inclined towards destruction. Even the power of the Great Light Temple's cultivation method was the same. It was possible to get them to purify the evil power, but to get them to save people, it was extremely difficult. Shang Tianliang, on the other hand, was gathering the vitality of the world, allowing the seeds that had been buried underground for an unknown period of time to sprout once more. This control over the power of vitality represented his current comprehension of the world. Chu Xiu said faintly, "The power of the Nine-Dragon Seal is indeed extraordinary, but now, Your Highness, your opponent is not me." Chu Xiu turned to Shang Tianliang and said, "City Lord Shang, do you have the confidence to block the Nine-Dragon Seal?" Shang Tianliang said angrily, "No." Since he came out of the mountain, although he had an agreement with Chu Xiu really made the most of his remaining value. Every time Shang Tianliang fought, the opponents that Chu Xiu found for him were very difficult. The last time was Luo Mo, and Shang Tianliang was almost crushed all the way. The last time was the Forgetting Sword Hut and the Storm Sword Tomb. Before his injuries had recovered, he was pulled out by Chu Xiu to be a fighter. And this time, he had to face the Nine-Dragon Seal directly in Yanjing City, or even in a place like the Imperial City, which was even more troublesome. Moreover, this thing had almost never been used over the years. Even in the most critical moment of the Northern Yan, no one had attacked the Imperial City. No one knew where the true peak power of the Nine-Dragon Seal was. Seeing that Chu Xiu had found such an opponent for him, it would be strange if Shang Tianliang had a good expression. Chapter 957. Although Shang Tianliang said that he was not confident, Chu Xiu had faith in him. Shang Tianliang was now a genuine Elysium of the heaven and earth realm, while Xiang Chong only relied on external objects to wield the Nine-Dragon Seal. If external objects were used well, their power would indeed be astonishing, but no matter what, they could not compare to ordinary Elysium of the heaven and earth realm experts. How strong was the human king sword of Sword King City in the past? In the end, it was still sent flying by a slap from Yi Shaonan. And now, although Shang Tianliang said that he was not confident, he did not hesitate in his attacks at all. Previously, Shang Tianliang's martial arts leaned towards close combat, explosive and fierce. It was not because he was born with this kind of martial arts, but because in an environment like the Green Capital, he did not know anything else besides this kind of martial arts. But now, Shang Tianliang had found the martial arts that his ancestor had in the past, and he had also added his own understanding to it, so its power was 30% stronger. The black dragon within the 9-dragon seal roared, and as Xiangchang's seal fell, a black dragon directly condensed in the sky. Surrounding it was a storm of origin energy, and it directly charged towards Shang Tianliang. Standing in midair, Shang Tianliang formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, dark clouds filled the sky, and heavy rain poured down. These were real raindrops, caused by Shang Tianliang's own understanding of the weather. But when the raindrops fell, they were not in the shape of raindrops, but in the shape of thin needles, surrounded by thick sword qi. The sword rain attacked, and the storm of origin energy around the black dragon was instantly torn apart. The next moment, Shang Tianliang waved his hand, and countless sword rain condensed in his hand, turning into a 300-meter-long sword. As he waved it, the sword slashed at the black dragon. A sorrowful dragon roar sounded, and the violent origin energy of the heaven and earth scattered in all directions. Some of the people present had never seen an ultimate expert of the Elysium of the heaven and earth fight in their lives. Now that they saw the fierce battle between the two, they even forgot to exclaim. Existences of the Elysium of the heaven and earth were really like immortals of the earth. With a wave of their hands, they could control heaven and earth, move mountains and overturn seas. If the two had not deliberately restrained their power, and let the scattered origin energy of the heaven and earth overflow in mid-air, the entire imperial city would have been destroyed. As the two of them fought fiercely, some members of the Xiang clan's royal family surrounded the old ancestor of the Xiang clan. They didn't know what to do. Xiang Chong was the crown prince, but Xiang Li was also a direct descendant of Xiang Long. They were fighting for the throne. Who should he help? Or rather, whose side should they stand on? That old ancestor of the Xiang family said in a deep voice, "What's the rush? No matter how strong Chu Xiu is, he is just an outsider. He can only help a member of the Xiang family ascend the throne. If he really wanted to usurp the throne, do you think Beigong Bailey and the others would turn a blind eye?" It was the same for Xiang Chong. His Majesty had only left behind a posthumous edict. It would be best if someone listened to it. If no one listened to it and you couldn't suppress others, you shouldn't blame others for losing the throne. Don't panic. Just sit here and watch the show. What we're protecting is the root of the Xiang dynasty. Let them fight for their face. The one who wins is the supremacy of the 9-5. This ancestor of the Xiang clan had lived for a long time, so much so that no one knew exactly how old he was. He had already seen the succession of emperors for several generations. In fact, the previous generations Xiang Long and the others had fought even more intensely. The eyes of the old ancestor of the Xiang clan couldn't help but reveal a trace of reminiscence. He still remembered that when Xiang Long ascended the throne, everyone thought that his elder brother would ascend the throne. As the younger brother, he was deeply trusted by his elder brother. He would definitely be like Xiang Chong and be conferred the title of king. Then, he would hold a portion of the power of the northern Yan in a glorious manner. In the end, who would have thought that at the moment of the ascension ceremony, Xiang Long would reveal his fangs. He had actually secretly contacted almost half of the northern Yan forces. After a massacre, he immediately turned the tables. No one expected that Xiang Long, who had always been well-behaved and even helped his elder brother strategize, would actually come to usurp the throne. Even the old ancestor of the Xiang clan didn't expect this. That battle was much more tragic than this one. Blood flowed like a river. Now, it was just a small matter. Although it was a small matter to the old ancestor of the Xiang clan, at that moment, the people from the martial hall under Chu Xiu had already fought with the people from the Hall of Masters and the Imperial Palace. A sharp light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He was also prepared to attack. His target wasn't Xiang Chong. He was prepared to help Shang Tianliang take down Xiang Chong first. Killing Xiang Chong was meaningless. Instead, it would anger the entire Xiang clan. Xiang Chong himself was only for show. Xiang Chong, who supported him with the posthumous edict, was the key. As long as Xiang Chong lost, Xiang Li would naturally find a way to deal with him after he ascended the throne. At that time, whether he wanted to kill or torture him would depend on his mood. However, at that moment, Xiang Chong suddenly shouted, "Kang Dongming! It's your turn to attack." As Xiang Chong's voice fell, the sword saint of the Eastern Sea, Kang Dongming, appeared out of nowhere. He looked at Xiang Chong with a stupefied expression. He extended a hand and said, "Only once." Xiang Chong shouted, "I know it's only once. Stop Chu Xiu. No. Kill him." Kang Dongming was an extremely eccentric person. When he was a guest at the Jiangshan pavilion, he often worked for money and disappeared after he earned it. Originally, with Kang Dongming's personality, he would never come to the Northern Yen to be Xiang Chong's teacher. The reason why he appeared here was that Xiang Chong had found a way to lure him into the Northern Yen. The price he had to pay was a sword mark left behind by the sword saint, Gu Qingqing, after her battle with Du Weiwei. Back then, Gu Qingqing transformed herself into a sword spirit and fought with Du Weiwei. Although she managed to injure Du Weiwei, her body and soul were both destroyed. However, at a cliff far away from where the two of them fought, because the power of that sword had almost dissipated, the sword had successfully left behind a sword mark. It was obtained by someone else, and no one knew how it had fallen into Bai Yan's hands. Although it was only a sword mark, it was still a sword mark left behind by the sword saint, Gu Qingqing. For any swordsman, it was a priceless treasure. When Xiang Long learned of Kang Dongming's strength, he made a deal with him. However, Kang Dongming only agreed to help Xiang Long once. Gu Qingqing's sword mark was only worth him using his full strength once. However, Xiang Long also played a trick in the end. Although he agreed, the condition was that Kang Dongming had to stay by Xiang Chong's side for a year. This opportunity to make a move could be used at will within this year. As long as this opportunity was used up or the year was up, Kang Dongming could leave. She didn't know whether Kang Dongming, the honest man, could see through the scheme. Anyway, he agreed to it. Now that Xiang Chong wanted to use this chance, Kang Dongming was more than happy to do so. To him, constantly training his swordsmanship and challenging the strong swordsman was what he should be doing. Following Xiang Chong was a waste of time. Looking at Chu Xiu, Kang Dongming did not have any killing intent, let alone hostility. In his entire life, only swordsmanship could make his mind fluctuate. He had never had enemies, and he had never treated others as his enemies. He only had those who blocked his way and caused him trouble. When Kang Dongming killed them, he did not have any killing intent. To him, killing was just a way to get rid of trash and obstacles. At this moment, Chu Xiu was not trash or an obstacle in his eyes. He was just a target to complete his mission. Once he was done with him, he could leave this boring place. Therefore, Kang Dongming did not say anything at all. He could not even be bothered to say a word. The sword hidden in the sharkskin scabbard in his hand was finally unsheathed. In an instant, the sword light traversed hundreds of miles, its sharpness piercing the clouds. It was an extremely ordinary sword, 3 feet and 3 inches long. It looked no different from a standard Wuxia iron sword. However, the sharpness of the sword was so piercing that it made one's eyes hurt, and one's mind trembled. When the sword fell, there was no strange phenomenon, nor was there any sword chi rippling out. But in the next moment, alarm bells went off in Chu Xiu's mind. Cultivating the heaven sun gazing at air, his perception was not the strongest among warriors of the same level, but it was among the best. He did not feel the slightest bit of power, but according to his calculations, a strong sense of danger was already attacking him from all directions. In an instant, the sun, moon, and stars revolved in Chu Xiu's eyes. He pushed his mental strength to the limit, and used the heaven sun gazing at air with all his might. In the next moment, Chu Xiu's figure suddenly retreated frantically to the left. But at the same time, the air around him let out a trembling sound that sounded like the cry of a sword. It seemed to resound in everyone's hearts. At the spot where Chu Xiu had just appeared, a sword chi seemed to appear out of thin air. It condensed in the void and slashed the ground, creating a sword mark that was hundreds of feet long. Almost in an instant, the damaged imperial city immediately activated the formation. But in the next moment, the formation exploded with bursts of light and was completely extinguished. The aftermath of Kang Dongming's sword had actually activated the formation and completely destroyed it at the same time. Chu Xiu looked at Kang Dongming in shock, while the others looked like they had seen a ghost. What kind of power was this? Was this Kang Dongming at the true fire spirit refinement realm or the heaven and earth elucidation realm? Chu Xiu took a deep breath. There was one thing he really did not expect, and that was Kang Dongming. He had very little information about the Sword Saint of the East Sea, including that of the Wind-Sweeping Tower. After all, the Wind-Sweeping Tower's influence in the outer endless sea was not strong. Although he had predicted that Kang Dongming would make a move, he did not expect Kang Dongming's strength to be so strong. He now knew how Sword King City, the Forgetful Sword Hut, and the Wind Cloud Sword Mound had lost. This guy was simply a monster. Others pursued martial arts while Kang Dongming pursued the ultimate swordsmanship. He was even willing to sacrifice martial arts for the sake of swordsmanship. His current strength was infinitely close to the heaven and earth elucidation realm. He was not suppressing his strength, but he did not try to comprehend and communicate with heaven and earth at all, devoting himself to swordsmanship. For the sake of swordsmanship, Kang Dongming did not even have the time to break through to the heaven and earth elucidation realm. If he was not a monster, then what was? You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.